Chapter 2903. A sea of corpse fluid. It was clearly on the surface of a planet. Although it was different from the forbidden land of the demonic sage that he knew, it wasn't enough to make Xianxia so surprised. The reason why he was shocked was because the heavens, the earth, the mountains, and the boundless vegetation. All of this clearly revealed a dense sense of ancientness and antiquity. Even the invisible aura in the void was the same. It was exactly the same as the aura he felt when he saw the giant star tortoise and the desolate golden dragon in the two inheritance images when he cultivated the hollow void technique and fused with the drop of immortal ancestral dragon blood. This made Xianxia suddenly feel like he was hallucinating. Could it be that he had dreamt back to the primordial era? After being stunned for a while, Xianxia gradually calmed down. Then, he once again swept his gaze to the surroundings. It was also at this moment that he suddenly realized an extremely strange situation. At this moment, he was within such a desolate mountain range, yet his ears actually didn't hear even the most ordinary cry of birds or roar of beasts. It was as if this boundless mountain range, or even this part of the world, was a completely dead land. Thinking of this, the expression on his face slightly changed. Then, his eyes caught sight of a towering mountain peak in the distance. Looking from afar, it was like a heavenly pillar that pierced through the clouds. With luck in his heart, Xianxia quickly soared into the air and flew towards the giant mountain peak that seemed to pierce the heavens. When he was in the air and looked down, he discovered that this giant mountain was actually like a volcano. There was a huge hollow ring-shaped mountain pass, and the inside of it was hollow, like an endless abyss. Before, Xianxia was too far away from this giant mountain, so he didn't feel it was real and clear. But now, as he approached, he discovered that the ring-shaped volcanic crater at the top of the giant mountain was about 1,000 miles in diameter. If one reached the top of the giant mountain and looked at the opposite side of the ring-shaped crater, they wouldn't be able to see the end at all. If Xianxia hadn't fallen from the sky, he would have mistakenly thought that the place he was standing at was actually the edge of the abyss. Xianxia had never seen such a magnificent ring-shaped volcano before. However, at this moment, the giant mountain peak under his feet, although it had the appearance of a ring-shaped crater like a volcano, and the inside of the mountain was also hollow, it was clearly not a so-called volcano. Because even if it was an extinct volcano, the magma vein activity in the depths of the mountain had disappeared for many years. But even if it was no longer hot, it was impossible for it to be like now. What was spreading out were clearly strands of extremely cold that made one feel thoroughly uncomfortable. This feeling not only didn't feel like a volcano, but more like the aura of hell. This strange situation unknowingly aroused Xianxia's curiosity. After a moment of hesitation, he quickly made a decision. His figure leaped up, and directly landed at the bottom of the ring-shaped crater below him. As his figure descended, the distance gradually decreased. At the same time, it was also because he was gradually getting used to this dark environment. More importantly, it was also because Xianxia's figure had to pass through a large amount of floating black fog as he descended. Therefore, not long after, when Xianxia's figure had descended 70 to 80,000 meters, the scene at the bottom of the ring-shaped crater, which was like an endless abyss, finally became clear in his line of sight. As his field of vision rapidly cleared up, Xianxia's expression once again changed in astonishment. This time, even his Xianxia was trembling with redness. It could be seen how shaken his mind was by the scene before him. It was common knowledge that the deeper one went into a ring-shaped crater, the wider it became. This huge ring-shaped crater was the same. Previously, when he was still at the top of the ring-shaped crater, he couldn't see the opposite side. But now, even though he hadn't reached the bottom of the crater, Xianxia still felt that all around him had become a boundless void. From this, it was enough to see how vast and boundless the bottom of the crater was. However, the shape of this boundless expanse of land was actually a boundless ocean. A black ocean. Xianxia had never heard of a boundless ocean appearing at the bottom of a ring-shaped crater. But in reality, this wasn't the strangest thing about this huge ring-shaped crater. In the air above this vast ocean that was pitch black and exuded an endless cold aura, there was clearly a layer of dense black fog that permeated the air. Previously, when Xianxia was descending, he had passed through layers of thin fog. It was obvious that this fog had slowly spread upwards from here. And at this moment, as Xianxia's figure once again slowly descended towards the boundless black ocean, his vision gradually became clearer. At this moment, through the gaps in the black fog that occasionally moved like waves in the absence of wind, Xianxia could clearly see that on the ink-black surface of the ocean below, there were countless different shapes, But all of them were incomparably terrifying and sinister floating corpses. These floating corpses were basically all kinds of living creatures, but all of them exuded an ancient feeling of vicissitudes. Yi Xian even saw a black sphere with a diameter of about 100 meters on a corner of the ocean not far away. At first, he was puzzled as to what kind of living creature it was, but as he gradually got closer at the same time, the sphere also moved along with the slight ripples of the black ocean. Gradually, Yi Xian finally realized that this was clearly a head with facial features similar to a human's, but a head that was incomparably enlarged. It was just a head, but it had a diameter of 100 meters. Was this a giant, or a supreme deity from the primordial age? As this thought flashed through his mind, Yi Xian suddenly realized something. Then, his expression changed again in shock. In this boundless black ocean, there were so many floating corpses of all kinds floating on the surface, almost covering more than 80% of the surface area within the range of his divine sense. Then what about below the surface of the ocean? What about the deeper parts of the ocean? Obviously, the endless corpses floating on the surface of the sea were only a small part of it. This was because if there were no more corpses, then the vast and boundless Black Sea at the bottom of the mountain would not be able to pass through at all. Little by little, they would accumulate into an ocean in the end. This Black Sea water was clearly corpse fluid, the fluid that slowly seeped out from the bodies of the corpses. After realizing this truth, Yi Xian's entire body turned completely cold, and even his spirit could not help but tremble. Terrifying. Indescribably terrifying. Corpse Fluid Sea. Chapter 2904. Corpse flower condensing fruit. Looking at everything in front of him, Yi Xian fell into an indescribable shock. If the Devil Saint Forbidden Land really existed, then this space, this world, was very likely to be a place that had been sealed since the primordial era. It was as if it had been forgotten in the boundless river of stars, and it had become a part of time that had been frozen for countless years. Whether it was the environment and aura of this world, or the appearances of the creatures in this endless pool of corpses, they all exuded a strong aura of desolation that was definitely not present in the galaxy and space-time Yi Xian was currently experiencing. If that was really the case, then what exactly had happened here before this desolate world was severed and imprisoned in the endless space and time of the boundless galaxy? With this kind of shock and thought, Yi Xian lowered his body once more. Only when he was only 1,000 meters away from the terrifying corpse pool did he stop. Then, on the surface of the pool, whether it was thick or thin, it was everywhere, and the floating black corpse aura started to sway in all directions. After a full half an hour, Yi Xian continued to move in one direction, but he still hadn't reached the edge of the black corpse pool. From this one could see how vast it was. Even now, the black corpse pond below was still filled with a large number of corpses. Some of the corpses had turned into skeletons, but some still had some flesh and blood. Some of them were even able to keep their bodies intact due to their special bloodline or because they were simply too powerful. However, they were filled with a thick sense of death, which made Yi Xian not dare to approach them. In this place, he had seen too many skeletons and corpses of such enormous creatures. In the end, he was almost numb to them. As Yi Xian ventured deeper into the pool of corpses, he soon spotted a few more islands. Yes, it was an island. But it was an island of bones. A large number of skeletons, perhaps due to the power of the corpse pool's internal flow, slowly gathered together and squeezed closer and closer together. The gaps between the skeletons became smaller and smaller. In the end, they joined together and formed this strange island made up purely of endless corpses. Yi Xian gathered his courage and landed on one of the islands. Then, he slowly walked with a shocked expression. The ground under his feet and everything on the island that he could see, whether it was the craggy peaks or the cave-like openings that occasionally appeared on a bone peak, everything was made up of skeletons. Even with Yi Xian's temperament, he couldn't help but feel a sense of fear as he stepped on this island of bones. There was also an indescribable feeling towards life. This made his mind suddenly brighten up. He didn't dare to say that it was an epiphany, but at this moment, his state of mind did indeed have an effect that was close to sublimation. One's realm could be improved, but the cultivation of one's state of mind required luck. Just based on this inexplicable understanding of the state of mind, Yi Xian didn't come in vain this time. He couldn't see anything at the moment, but he would benefit a lot in the future because of this. Rumble! Rumble! At this moment, the endless corpse pool outside the island of bones suddenly emitted a continuous series of dull roars. Yi Xian's body shook and he subconsciously turned his head to look. Through the endless surface of the black corpse pool, Yi Xian could clearly see numerous invisible whirlpools wreaking havoc. In addition, a powerful airflow inexplicably appeared above the corpse pool, causing the black corpse aura above the pool to surge. All of this directly caused the countless corpses of living beings that floated within the corpse pool that had been deathly still for so many years to actually come to life at this moment, and the hideous and terrifying corpses and skeletons made various movements under the surging and surging of the pool of corpse fluid, causing it to be indescribably horrifying. At this moment, the endless corpse pool seemed to come to life. The inexplicably surging airflow stirred up a torrential wave of corpses and wind. At the same time, there were roars and howls that sounded like roars and howls that rang out. This was caused by the invisible airflow passing through the gaps between the skeletons during the violent flow. But in such an environment, how could these roars and whistles not be the unwillingness and anger of the countless creatures floating in the endless corpse pool? Rumble! Gotcha? Just as Xianxia was shocked by the sudden change in the boundless black corpse pool, he was dumbfounded on the island of bones and didn't have any reaction to it. Just in front of his sight, in the pool formed by the endless black corpse liquid, a black round object with a diameter of a meter suddenly rushed out. It looked like a black thunderball, and its interior was extremely unstable. The black energy in the ball could be vaguely seen rotating and surging endlessly. After rushing out of the corpse pool, it soared into the sky. It didn't explode until it reached a height of about a kilometer. With this explosion, an electric net burst out in an instant, quickly spreading in all directions. It was indeed a lightning ball, but its energy was not the lightning attribute energy of nature. Instead, it came from the bottom of the pool. If he was not mistaken, it should be a large amount of corpse aura and even the evil thoughts of these creatures that had died. Under the pressure of the pool water, they gradually gathered together and condensed inward under the pressure of the pool water, becoming denser and denser before finally forming the lightning ball. Boom! Rumble! Gotcha! Just as these thoughts flashed through Xianxia's mind, the surface of the corpse pool in that area once again rushed out of the corpse thunderball. They were big and small, and it was unknown what kind of power caused it, but it actually shot towards the top of the pool one after another. After reaching a certain height, it suddenly exploded, bursting out with corpse electricity. Although there were different sizes of corpse lightning, they were all pitch black in color. However, after these corpse thunder exploded, although there were strong and weak corpse electricity, there was clearly a more obvious difference. This point quickly attracted Xianxia's interest. That was the color. At first, the corpse thunder that burst out after the corpse thunder exploded was black, but in the large number of corpse thunder that exploded later, there were clearly some lightning of other colors. Red, green, even gold. Just as Xianxia was puzzled by this strange phenomenon and faintly felt that there was something hidden in it, the sky suddenly brightened at this moment. In that area, about 100 kilometers in radius, the black corpse gas that filled the air above the pool was finally ignited by the corpse electricity that spread out after the corpse thunder exploded. It was the burning of the corpse gas that brought about the light, but it revealed a strange pale color. It was also at this time that Xianxia suddenly saw a delicate flower under the monstrous corpse flames. It was also at this moment that the notification of the devouring system quietly sounded in his mind. Chapter 2905. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. May you pluck more. Nine-eyed golden crystal? Pluck more? Xianxia was dumbstruck. His mind was spinning. Unknowingly, he recalled what Li Mosquito had explained to him about the multi-eyed sense crystal. The multi-eyed sense crystal referred to the demonic sense star crystals with eye halos. An ordinary devil will star crystal was just a translucent black crystal. The crystal was completely empty, and there was nothing inside. As for the multi-pupil sense crystal, one could see layers of halos that resembled pupils within the crystal. The minimum number of halos was 1 to 9. The more halos there were, the higher the grade of the crystal. Therefore, if the multi-eyed sense crystal was further divided, it could be called the single-eyed sense crystal, the dual-eyed sense crystal, the 8-eyed sense crystal and the 9-eyed sense crystal. If Li Mosquito was right, then wouldn't the 9-eyed sense crystal be the highest grade among all the multi-eyed sense crystals? Wasn't his luck a little too good? One had to know that according to Xianxia's understanding, even in the entire devil cultivator race, the true upper echelons only had a few multi-eyed thought crystals in their hands. Even if it was a single-eyed thought crystal, it would only have a single dazzling thought crystal. The mind power in this sense crystal was different from the normal demonic sense crystal, which didn't have any eye effects. It was more advanced. Therefore, many high-level martialists of the Demon Man race would only absorb the advanced mind power of the multi-pupil sense crystal when they had a breakthrough in their mind power or when they felt that their mind source cores were about to transform. They could make use of this effect to break through in one fell swoop. Even so, according to the information that Yi Xian had obtained from the Black Mosquito Star's Star Web database, the highest-grade multi-eyed sense crystal that had ever been found in the demonic man race was only an 8-eyed sense crystal. Because it was silvery white, this sense crystal was called an 8-eyed silver crystal. It was treated as the race's most precious treasure and kept in the demonic Emperor Star's Saint Demon Ancestor Hall. Even the Demon Emperor couldn't bear to use it. Now, he had inexplicably come across a 9-eyed golden crystal. The 8-eyed sense crystal was silver, and the 9-eyed sense crystal was gold. This was in accordance with the rules, but besides Yi Xian, no one else in the demonic man race knew that the 9-eyed sense crystal was actually gold. Because they had never seen it before. Yi Xian was indeed shocked by the fact that he had unexpectedly encountered a top-notch 9-eyed golden crystal. However, this was not what he was more surprised about. Instead, this multi-pupil thought crystal was actually produced in the corpse pond. It was formed from a very beautiful plant in the corpse pond that could be called a corpse flower. After undergoing the baptism of corpse thunder, corpse lightning, and corpse flames, the flower grew into fruit. This fruit was the multi-pupil thought crystal. All of this was simply inconceivable. Yi Xian had previously thought that this was most likely a type of mineral. At most, it was produced in a special place. But at this moment, everything in front of him clearly confirmed the strange reality of the corpse flower condensing fruit turning into polychoria. Rumble. Boom! Gotcha? Just as Yi Xian was in a daze as he stared blankly ahead. However, his mind was rapidly spinning as he analyzed everything. In the area of the corpse pond in front of him, the corpse lightning in the depths of the pond still rushed into the sky one by one and exploded. Then, the corpse lightning burst out and entered the raging corpse flames that enveloped the entire area of the pond. However, the area where the corpse flames burned in the sky was only this 100-mile radius of the corpse pond. It did not spread out and affect the entire boundless black corpse pond. This was because the corpse chi that filled the entire surface of the pond was not a hole. They were like clouds, with a small canopy here and a large canopy there. There would be some gaps between them. When the corpse lightning in this 100-mile area exploded, the invisible airflow that was produced unknowingly pushed away the corpse chi that filled the air around the edge of this area. Under such circumstances, when the corpse chi in this area was ignited by the corpse lightning, the corpse flames burned along with the corpse chi to the edge. When they encountered a separation zone where there was no corpse chi, the corpse flames stopped burning. The corpse chi at the edge was pushed away by the invisible airflow, leaving behind a ring without corpse chi. It was the same as when a forest fire broke out, cutting down trees outside the fire to form a line of separation. In short, the blazing corpse flames only wreaked havoc in the air above the 50-kilometer radius of the pool and didn't spread to the entire corpse pool. Otherwise, Yi Xian wouldn't have any other choice but to take the risk and quickly escape from the corpse flames. At this moment, as the flames that were spreading out finally stopped, they were restricted to the area above the corpse pool that had a radius of 50 kilometers. At the same time that Yi Xian's heart relaxed, his gaze swept through the area beneath the monstrous corpse flames. His entire body instantly became excited once again. Corpse flowers. Corpse flowers again. And there was more than one. Previously, he had clearly glanced over this area of the corpse pond. Not to mention more corpse flowers. In fact, even the corpse flower that had just condensed the 9-eyed golden crystal fruit appeared inexplicably. Yi Xian originally thought that he did not pay attention at that time, but now it seemed that as a large number of corpse flowers were captured by his gaze, the first corpse flower clearly did not exist before. It was the same as the large number of corpse flowers that appeared in his line of sight now, appearing inexplicably and suddenly. As for the reason why these corpse flowers appeared, there was no need to think too much about it. It was clearly because of the corpse flames that were triggered by the corpse lightning. It was as if they had to go through the baptism of the corpse flames before they could condense the fruit-like multi-eyed thought crystal in the bud. Therefore, before the appearance of the corpse flames, even if there were corpse flowers in a certain corpse pond, they were hidden and would not appear easily. Only when the corpse flames erupted would they take the initiative to appear in order to undergo the baptism and condense the fruit crystals. Although the truth of the matter might have other details, according to Yi Xian's analysis and deduction, this should be the main theme. Of course, regardless of the facts and the truth, as well as the reason or principle, those were actually minor details. It was not important to understand them or not. For Yi Xian, the most important thing was that this time, he was probably going to reap a great harvest. At a glance, in the area of 100 square miles where the corpse flames were burning fiercely in the sky, there were at least 100 demonic corpse flowers that appeared on the surface of the corpse pond. Apart from the initial golden corpse flower, Yi Xian saw another 3 golden corpse flowers, as well as about 7 to 8 silver corpse flowers. Apart from that, the other 100 corpse flowers were all black. It was only a small area of 100 square miles, but there were more than 100 gigantic demonic corpse flowers that appeared out of nowhere. At this moment, they were all bathed in the corpse flames above, swaying slightly with some kind of invisible airflow that was emitted by the corpse flames. This scene revealed a cold and demonic beauty, and it caused Yi Xian to suddenly think of a sentence that contained an artistic conception. Chapter 2906. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. The secret of the perception crystal. More than 100 incomparably beautiful corpse flowers caused Yi Xian to become excited. The only reason why he had gone through so much trouble to come to the Devil Saint Forbidden Land was to find the multi-pupil perception crystal so that the fragment of the immortal level superbrain, which was the core of his personal star communication system, could grow rapidly. Only in this way would he be able to obtain a wider range of information through the improvement of his personal star communication system's capabilities. Only in this way would he be able to grow rapidly in the context of the universe. Of course, finding the origin of engulfment, which had become the currency of the devouring system, was also one of his goals. However, as long as he had a wider range of information, he would be more confident in finding the origin of engulfment. Therefore, this goal was actually included. Previously, he was worried that even if he entered the Devil Saint Forbidden Land, he would not be able to find the multi-pupil perception crystal. How frustrating would that be? After all, the Devil Saint Forbidden Land was in the vast void of the Milky Way. It was bound to be vast. Finding the multi-pupil perception crystal, which was only the size of a fingernail, would be like finding a needle in a haystack. In fact, according to Yi Xian's understanding, there were not many multi-pupil perception crystals in the entire demon tribe. Even the real upper echelons of the imperial family only had a few. It was obvious how low the probability of it being produced was. However, all his worries and concerns were now gone. Even if the sense crystal fruits produced by more than 100 demonic corpse flowers could not allow the fragment of the immortal level galaxy funbrain to grow into a complete immortal level galaxy superbrain, it was still possible for it to grow into a complete immortal level galaxy superbrain. It could at least increase its quality and level by 1 or 2 times, right? This at least ensured that Yi Xian did not come in vain. Apart from other unexpected gains, such as the inexplicable improvement of his state of mind, he had finally gained something from his original goal. Of course, it was not easy to come here. It would be impossible for Yi Xian not to think about obtaining more multi-pupil perception crystals. However, as soon as this thought appeared, it was immediately thrown to the back of his mind. Now was not the time to be greedy. If he wanted to be greedy, he had to at least wait until he obtained the 100 over multi-pupil perception crystals in front of him. Otherwise, he would be too speechless if he thought of other things before he even got his hands on them. With this kind of excitement in his heart, Yi Xian stood at the edge of the island of bones beneath his feet. However, his gaze was fixed on the surface of the corpse pool that had a radius of 50 kilometers in front of him. Soon, as time passed, the corpse flames above the pond gradually weakened. After all, no matter how dense the corpse chi was, it would eventually run out. Once the corpse chi was gone, the corpse flames would naturally die out. At first, Yi Xian was worried that after the corpse flames disappeared, these demonic corpse flowers that appeared because of the corpse flames would once again return to the depths of the corpse pool. If that was the case, then Yi Xian would be overjoyed, wasting his expression and being excited for nothing. However, at this moment, when he saw a few corpse flowers at the edge of the area, after the corpse flames above them had died out, they still swayed slightly and steadily stayed at the edge of the pool. When he saw that they did not disappear, Yi Xian's slightly anxious heart finally calmed down. It was good that they did not run. If they did not run, then there was no need to rush. There was no need to risk some unknown danger under the corpse flames and immediately go to pick them. More than 10 minutes passed. At this moment, the corpse flames above the 100-mile-wide corpse pool had shrunk by more than half. The diameter of the corpse flames was only 1/3 of its original size, burning above the central area. Yi Xian held back for a long time. Finally, at this moment, he leaped up and rushed toward that area. After all, there were no more corpse flames at the edge of the area. However, There were 30 to 40 beautiful corpse flowers swaying gently there. The swaying made Yi Xian's heart itch unbearably. Soon, with excitement in his heart, Yi Xian finally arrived at the edge of the 100-mile-wide corpse flame area. The first thing he rushed toward was a golden corpse flower. In this 100-mile-wide area, there were now 4 golden corpse flowers and 8 silver corpse flowers. Among the 4 golden corpse flowers, the other 3 were in the central area. There were still corpse flames burning above them. Therefore, Yi Xian did not pay attention to them. He would first get the one in the periphery. As this thought flashed through his mind, Yi Xian's rapidly approaching figure finally approached. But it was also at this moment that his figure, which was moving at an extremely fast speed, suddenly shook. He sucked in a breath of cold air, and his entire body trembled violently. It was too unexpected. If it were not for his courage, if it were someone with less courage, he would have been scared out of his wits. Previously, because the distance was too far, Yi Xian could see the corpse flowers. After all, each corpse flower, including the flower stem, was about a meter tall and was considered a large flower. However, although he could see the flowers, he could not clearly see the situation at the bottom of the flower stem because of the distance. However, now that he was close, he could naturally see it clearly. It was precisely because of this that he was given a great fright. Because this golden corpse flower did not come from the corpse pond below. Instead, it grew from the mouth of a living creature's corpse that was facing up. Its roots were deeply buried in the corpse's wide-open mouth. It gave people the feeling that after the corpse died, someone threw a flower seed into its mouth. Now, that flower seed sprouted and grew from its mouth. Not only did it grow into a demonic corpse flower the size of a meter, it even bore a golden crystal fruit the size of a pigeon's egg. As this conjecture flashed through his mind, Yi Xian's entire body trembled slightly. He subconsciously looked around. Every demonic corpse flower that he saw was indeed growing from the mouths of corpses that were facing up. One flower was an accident. If there were 2 or 3 flowers, he could still use this excuse to deceive himself. However, now that every flower that he saw was like this, then, was there any need to deceive himself? There was no doubt that these corpse flowers grew from the mouths of the living creatures in the pond. Previously, Yi Xian did not see them. It was not because they were hiding in the pond and did not come out, but because they had not been born yet. After the corpse gas in the sky turned into corpse flames, due to some unknown inducement, they suddenly grew rapidly from the mouths of the corpses and condensed into crystal fruits in the blink of an eye. This was already a fact and could not be doubted. However, what was the reason for all this? Was it because these living creatures that grew corpse flowers had some special characteristics, or was this terrifying corpse pond really a certain existence that, in order to plant corpse flowers and collect crystal fruits, collected and even personally created countless corpses of living creatures and threw them into the pond, using them as fertile soil to grow flowers? As he calculated all this in his mind, Yi Xian suddenly felt an incomparably mysterious feeling towards the golden crystal fruit in the center of the huge flower plate of the golden corpse flower. Chapter 2907. A huge harvest. After suddenly discovering that these demonic corpse flowers were actually growing out of the mouths of ancient creatures, Yi Xian was somewhat absent-minded. Suddenly, he inexplicably felt a mysterious and strange aura. It seemed to be shrouding the sky above this endless corpse pool, hiding around his body. It gave birth to an inexplicable feeling of unease. It was like a suspicious ghost. At this moment, no matter how Yi Xian looked at his surroundings, he felt that it was strange. His entire heart was thumping wildly. However, this kind of fluctuating change in his state of mind very quickly disappeared under his strong efforts to pacify himself. Following that, Yi Xian took a deep breath and shook off all the miscellaneous thoughts in his mind. He reached out his hand and plucked the golden crystal fruit in the center of the huge flower disc of the golden corpse flower. No matter what secrets there were, he was already here. He had already seen the multi-pupil perception crystal. It was even right in front of him. If he didn't take it, what kind of logic would that make? As for whether there would be any other consequences, or whether there were unfathomable hidden dangers behind this multi-pupil perception crystal, these were not things that he needed to consider now. He would slowly think about it in the future. He had to get the thing first. Thinking like this, Yi Xian had already pinched the golden crystal in his fingers. With a light lift, it was separated from the flower disc of the demonic corpse flower. Yi Xian held it in front of his eyes and examined it carefully. First of all, it was golden. It was the size of a pigeon's egg and had a prismatic shape. There were countless small prismatic refraction surfaces on its surface, just like a polished diamond. Therefore, when Yi Xian held it in his hand and examined it carefully, he felt that it was unbelievably beautiful. And in this prismatic golden crystal, Yi Xian counted carefully. There were indeed 9 layers of pupil halos. The outer layer was the largest, wrapping around each other. When it reached the innermost 9th layer, it was just a small dot. Suddenly looking at it, it really did seem like he was looking at an eyeball with 9 layers of pupil halos. It was a kind of dazzling, as if he looked at it seriously, his mind would be immersed in the illusion. Other than that, Yi Xian didn't notice any other abnormalities or special colors for the time being. Right at this moment, just as he was about to keep this precious 9-eyed golden crystal into his undying world, he unexpectedly discovered a situation that caused him to jump in fright. Very quickly, his jaw dropped in astonishment. In his line of sight, the gigantic demonic flower from which he had taken the 9-eyed golden crystal was rapidly dissipating in an almost illusory manner. This process had obviously started a while ago, probably right after he took out the 9-eyed golden crystal. It was just that Yi Xian was too preoccupied with examining the 9-eyed golden crystal in his hand to notice. At this moment, half of the bewitching corpse flower had already dissipated. It did not wither, nor did it collapse. Instead, it turned from a material object into an illusory golden speck of light. From top to bottom, it rapidly dispersed and disappeared. This type of miraculous disillusionment quickly reached the root, extending into the mouth of that creature's corpse that had its mouth wide open. However, everything didn't stop there. Very quickly, that corpse also started disillusionment, starting from its face and spreading to its entire body, rapidly turning into golden specks of light and dissipating. Not sure if it was an illusion or not, but Yi Xian clearly discovered that this creature that originally had its mouth wide open and looked incomparably ferocious seemed to have the bloodline of an ape, but had a pair of gigantic wings on its back. The process of disillusionment was transmitted from the corpse flower to its body, starting from its face. Its originally ferocious expression seemed to have turned into tranquility. Even its originally angry mouth was closed, as if it had been freed from its torment and was relieved. Very quickly, under Yi Xian's astonished gaze, the entire corpse that was about 3 meters tall had completely turned into a small golden speck of light in less than a minute, disappearing without a trace. Looking at the empty space between the corpses on the surface of the pool where it was originally located, Yi Xian suspected that he was in a dream. Everything was too unreal. After calming himself down, Yi Xian flipped his hand and kept the 9-eyed golden crystal in his body, placing it in a small crystal box to prevent its energy from dissipating. Yi Xian still had quite a few of these small crystal boxes, all of which were obtained from the Black Wind's warehouse. It should be a special item prepared by the demon army to store some kind of energy that dissipated easily. There were exactly 100 of them in total. Following that, he did not continue to delay, turning around and rushing towards the other corpse flowers. This time, he did not hesitate and directly plucked the multi-eyed sense crystal from the center of the corpse flowers, keeping it in the undying world in his body, storing it in the small crystal box, before moving on to the next corpse flower. As he continued to pluck the corpse flowers, Yi Xian would occasionally turn around to look at the corpse flowers that he had just plucked. As expected, he discovered that after every corpse flower's crystal fruit was plucked, it would be like the first corpse flower, disappearing from the bottom to the bottom, and finally to the root, passing this disillusion to the creature that nurtured and nourished the corpse flower. Finally, the corpse marrow also carried a kind of relieved and liberated aura, disappearing completely. After every pluck it was the same. The only difference was the color of the small specks of light that quickly dissipated when disappearing. When the golden corpse flower dissipated, what appeared was countless golden specks of light. When the silver corpse flower dissipated, the countless specks of light that appeared were silver. As for the black corpse flowers, the large number of specks of light that appeared when disappearing was a kind of semi-transparent faint black color. After plucking the corpse flowers in the periphery, the corpse flame above the corpse pond was finally reduced to a small area of a dozen meters in radius, and would be completely extinguished soon. While there was still some light, Yi Xian immediately sped up. After a short while, he had finished plucking all the crystal fruits in the central area. Then, he flew around in a circle in mid-air. After making sure that he did not miss anything, he was relieved. His figure flashed, and he swept toward the skeleton island that he had previously landed on. Before he reached the island, the light behind him had quietly dimmed, and the corpse flame was finally extinguished. The entire corpse pond once again fell into an endless darkness. Fortunately, Whether it was Yi Xian's mental power or divine sense, they could spread out in this extreme darkness, replacing the vision of the naked eye. Therefore, even if there was no light to him, everything around him was still as clear as a candle's flame. After landing on the skeleton island, Yi Xian took out his harvest this time and began to count them. The 4 9-pupil golden crystals were placed in 4 small crystal boxes by themselves. There were 8 pieces of 8-eyed silver crystal, and they were also stored in 8 small crystal boxes. In addition, there were some black and semi-transparent multi-eyed sense crystals of other grades. Based on the number of layers of pupil halos inside, these sense crystals should be from 3-eyed to 7-eyed, a total of 103 pieces. Chapter 2908. Gongming Tian Yun Yi Xian stored the 103 black translucent multi-pupil consciousness crystals, which ranged from 3 pupils to 7 pupils, in 5 small crystal boxes according to their different levels. The 3-eyed and 4-eyed crystals had the most, with over 30 each. The 7-eyed crystals had the least, but there were still 12 of them. These 5 small crystal boxes were quickly stored in the undying world within Yi Xian's body. After that, Yi Xian played with the 8 8-eyed golden crystals for a while before keeping them in his body as well. Right now, there were only 4 small crystal boxes in front of him, each containing a 9-eyed golden crystal. Yi Xian examined them carefully and realized that there were slight differences between the 4 boxes of 9-eyed golden crystals. Of course, they were mostly the same. If one did not examine them carefully, one would not be able to see the differences. This difference was reflected in 2 aspects. 1 was the depth of color. 2 was the number of small prismatic facets on the surface of the golden crystals. In terms of color, even though all 4 of them were golden semi-transparent crystals, the one that Yi Xian picked first shone brighter than the other 4. In terms of facets, the one that Yi Xian picked first had the most facets. There were thousands of facets on the surface of the crystal. Even though the other 3 also had thousands of facets, they had fewer facets than the first one. Even among the 3 9-eyed golden crystals, the one with the most minor refractive surfaces had 600 less minor refractive surfaces than the first one. Even though Yi Xian could not figure out the difference, he was sure of one thing. Among the 4 9-eyed golden crystals, the one that he picked first was definitely the best and most perfect one. With this guess in mind, Yi Xian quickly kept the other 3 9-eyed golden crystals into his undying world. Then, he took the first 9-eyed golden crystal out of the crystal box and played with it for a while before keeping it into his body. He threw it to the devouring system for identification. Very quickly, the system's notification rang in Yi Xian's mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have obtained 1 9-eyed golden crystal. Appraisal complete. Grade: 9-eyed level 9. Quality: perfect 9-eyed. Attribute: primordial mystique inheritance. Do you want to start collecting the primordial mystique inheritance immediately? Wait. Yi Xian subconsciously roared out these words in his mind. He then realized that he had overreacted. As long as he did not give a definite answer, the system would not act on its own accord. However, he did not have the time to be embarrassed. He focused all his attention on the system's notification in his mind. 9-eyed level 9 was expected. Perfect 9-eyed mystique inheritance was. But what was the meaning of the primordial divine ability inheritance in the appraisal result? Why did it ask him to collect the primordial mystique inheritance immediately? Could it be that he would be able to obtain the inheritance of a divine ability after absorbing the 9-eyed golden crystal? Moreover, it was of the primordial level. Wasn't this a bit too much of a joke? If that was the case, wouldn't there be many powerful people in the demon tribe who would have such a primordial mystique inheritance? After all, although the multi-eyed divine crystal was rare, some of the higher-ups in the demon tribe still had 2 or 3 of them. If he didn't figure this out, Yi Xian obviously wouldn't act rashly. What if there were some unknown dangers or even dangers? Thinking of this, he immediately took out the other 3 9-eyed golden crystals and threw them to the devouring system for appraisal. The result caused him to be stunned once again. The appraisal results of these 3 9-eyed golden crystals were exactly the same, without a single difference. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have obtained 1 9-eyed golden crystal. Appraisal complete. Grade: 9-eyed level 9. Quality: normal 9-eyed. Attribute: spiritual origin crystal. Do you want to start collecting it immediately? Basically, the result was similar to the first one. However, in terms of quality and attribute, the difference was like heaven and earth. In terms of quality, the first one was a perfect nine-eyed crystal, but these three were normal nine-eyed. In terms of attribute, the first one was a primordial mystique inheritance, but these three were spiritual origin crystals. And in terms of the question at the end of the notification, the absorption of these three crystals was only a question. What was absorbed was probably only spiritual origin. Of course, it was far from normal spiritual origin. The quality of the nine-eyed level 9 was right there. But these three crystals were obviously not like the first one. In terms of absorption, apart from obtaining pure, high-quality spiritual origin energy, one could also obtain a primordial mystique inheritance. With this comparison, Xianxia basically knew what was going on. It seemed that not all multi-pupil sense crystals contained some kind of divine ability inheritance from the primordial age. Only a nine-eyed golden crystal that had reached the 9th grade of the 9 eyes and was a perfect 9th grade in terms of quality would contain such a divine ability that originated from the primordial era. Therefore, the multi-eyed divine crystals in the hands of the demon dwellers could at most absorb some high-quality spiritual origin energy. Even the three in Xianxia's hands had reached the 9th level of the 9 pupils, but they weren't perfect in terms of quality. They were only ordinary 9 pupils golden crystals, and they didn't contain any inheritances. There was no need to mention the goods in their hands that were like rotten street goods to Xianxia. After confirming this result, Xianxia was instantly relieved. Perfect 9-eyed golden crystals were not easy to find. Although this corpse pool was boundless, and if there were golden 9-eyed golden crystals, there might not be perfect level 9, but even if there were definitely not many. In addition, the 9-eyed golden crystals that appeared were very rare to begin with. With this accumulation, perfect 9-eyed golden crystals were basically something that could only be found by chance. In that case, wasn't the value of the perfect 9-eyed golden crystal in his hands immeasurable? In addition, what exactly was the divine ability inheritance contained within this perfect grade 9 eyes golden crystal? A primordial level divine ability. Just thinking about it was enough to move him. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Xianxia's heart thumped faster and faster. In the end, he couldn't restrain himself, and after putting the other 3 9-eyed golden crystals into the small crystal box and storing them into the undying world within his body, he finally gave the order to Devour to immediately absorb the first 9-eyed golden crystal and accept the divine ability inheritance contained within. When this order was given, Xianxia was already sitting cross-legged on the ground of Skeleton Island. He closed his eyes and entered a state of cultivation where he forgot about everything around him. The system's confirmation notification sounded, and then it began the process of absorbing the perfect 9-eyed golden crystal. Very quickly, strands of golden spiritual origin energy were sent into Xianxia's mind and automatically entered the purplish-black spiritual core in his mind. This process lasted for an unknown period of time. In the end, Xianxia, who was immersed in the process, was suddenly awakened by the system notification in his mind. Chapter 2909. One arrow shatters the heaven's heaven-falling bow? Xianxia was stunned when he heard those 3 words. His first reaction was to wonder if the system had made a mistake, or if he had misheard it. The 3 words heaven-falling bow clearly indicated that it was a magic treasure. Although the name of the bow sounded quite domineering, this small 9-eyed golden crystal was not a spatial magic treasure. How could there be a bow named Heaven falling in it? Wasn't he supposed to get a powerful divine ability from the desolate antiquity era? Just as these doubts flashed through his mind, Xianxia suddenly felt his knowledge sea tremble, as if something had been directly sent in by the devouring system. Could it be that the 9-eyed golden crystal contained the law of primordial era's divine ability? With this thought, Xianxia suddenly became excited. It wasn't that he hadn't grasped divine abilities before, but the environment and background at that time were different. Divine abilities were closely related to some kind of law of heaven and earth. For example, the void suppression divine ability used by the Void Ladybird Empress in the Black Hole of Life was a type of divine ability that used the law of void. However, the void suppression divine ability that the Void Ladybird Empress had mastered was not complete and was incomplete. Otherwise, with the strength of the law of void, it would not have been so weak. Although Xianxia had mastered some divine abilities in the past. However, whether it was in the immortal world or the god world, the divine abilities that he had mastered were actually comprehended in the narrow environment of a single star like the 9 heaven star. Although every divine ability was indeed related to some kind of law of heaven and earth, the law of heaven and earth mentioned here was an extremely narrow law of heaven and earth at the level of the 9 heaven star. Now, Yi Xian had already left the Nine Heaven Star and entered the vast and boundless Milky Way outside. The great shadow of heaven and earth he was in was no longer the inner world of a single star, but the background of the entire vast and boundless starry sky. In this environment of the starry sky, the law of heaven and earth within a single star was no longer applicable. Therefore, the divine abilities that Yi Xian had painstakingly mastered before were all useless in the starry sky world. There was no way he could use it. And now, the divine art he obtained from this 9-pupil golden crystal would be his first divine art in the context of the starry sky. Moreover, this divine art originated from the distant desolate antiquity era. Just this point alone was enough to predict its extraordinariness. When he thought of this, Yi Xian could no longer hold back. He immediately immersed his mind into his sea of consciousness. He wanted to grasp this desolate era divine ability as soon as possible. Even if he could only display a small portion of its power for the time being, it should be enough for Yi Xian, whose cultivation was still low. With such a strong expectation, Yi Xian's consciousness quickly entered his sea of consciousness. Immediately after, he saw the small golden bow that was suspended in the air above his sea of consciousness. Before this, there were already 2 foreign objects suspended above his sea of consciousness. One of them was the spirit source core that hovered in the eastern part of his knowledge sea. The second was the void crystal that was hovering in the western part of his sea of consciousness. And now, this small golden bow that was hovering in the northern part of his sea of consciousness was obviously the third foreign object. This golden bow was clearly in the form of energy. Its entire body was golden, and it was extremely small. It was only the size of a thumb, and there was no bowstring. Needless to say, there was not a single arrow. It was completely a naked bow. However, its shape was rather ancient and mysterious. The bow was composed of 3 parts. In the middle of the bow was a 2-headed monster. Its wide-open mouth was facing up and down, while the upper and lower parts of the bow were 2 bowed humanoid creatures. The 2-headed monster's wide-open mouth swallowed the 2 humanoid creatures' legs and a part of their calves. The ends of the bow were connected to their painfully raised heads, and their mouths were where the bowstring was. Their hands were at the sides of their mouths, as if they were howling miserably. Their expressions were inexplicably strange. Seeing this small and strange golden bow, Yi Xian was stunned. Could this be the fallen sky bow that he obtained from the 9-pupil golden crystal? Some kind of divine art from the distant antiquity era? Wasn't this too much of a scam? A divine art from the antiquity era had turned into a strange small bow? The key point was that it was a defective product. It was fine if there were no arrows, but at least there should be a bowstring, right? Depressed, Yi Xian sighed and extended a wisp of his divine sense over, as if he had accepted his fate. Soon, he touched the small golden bow that was hovering in the northern part of his sea of consciousness. The next moment, an explosion suddenly came without warning. It was like a thunderclap on a dry day. In an instant, Yi Xian's consciousness was shaken, and he almost fell into a deep sleep on the spot. Boom! With this huge explosion, Yi Xian's consciousness shook for a moment. When he finally recovered, he suddenly found that the surrounding environment had completely changed. It was no longer his sea of consciousness, but a boundless void of stars. Even more surprising to him was that this unfamiliar and vast starry sky actually gave him a feeling of déjà vu, and it revealed a simple and boundless feeling of age and distance. It was surprisingly similar to the void of stars where he saw the starry sky giant turtle when he cultivated the void dimension fragment and the golden starry sky giant dragon when he fused with the immortal ancestral dragon blood. Could it be that this small golden bow really came from the antiquity era? Otherwise, as soon as his divine sense touched it, it immediately caused a terrifying explosion that seemed to be the rumbling of the Grand Tao, and then he saw this boundless starry sky from the antiquity era. Screech! Roar! Roar! Just as Yi Xian was in a daze, a different earth-shattering sound suddenly came from the endless distance of the vast galaxy that was filled with an endless ancient aura. There was a fierce roar full of violent aura. There was a roar full of the power to swallow the starry sky. There was also a high-pitched dragon roar that seemed to be able to tear the entire universe apart. Yi Xian's body suddenly shook violently, and he subconsciously turned his head and looked in the direction of the sound. In the next moment, he saw an extremely tragic battle at the end of the endless starry sky. The entire endless starry sky was the battlefield. Everywhere on this boundless battlefield, there were countless powerful beings that could not be seen today. Even though they were separated by the endless starry sky, Yi Xian seemed to be able to clearly sense the terrifying aura that was emitted from their bodies. He could not describe this aura, and did not know what kind of realm it was. But Yi Xian did not doubt that even a supreme existence like the Mad Mosquito Emperor could only be reduced to an ant in the face of this aura. As for being less than an ant. Swish! Just as Yi Xian was shocked, a high-pitched screech sounded out, and a brilliant and dazzling golden light suddenly appeared in the boundless bloody battlefield in front of him. A golden arrow shot out at a speed that surpassed time and space, and instantly rushed to the end of the vast starry sky. Along the way, it destroyed everything, and even the starry sky was cut in two. Chapter 29:10. The ancient and confusing past. This golden arrow of light, capable of tearing through the void of the galaxy, soared into the heavens, and as it did so, Yi Xian's body trembled violently once more. He wasn't shocked by its terrifying supreme power, but was shocked by the familiarity of this golden light. Subconsciously, Yi Xian's line of sight followed the direction of the terrifying golden arrow. Very quickly, a figure that was not very tall entered Yi Xian's line of sight. It was humanoid in shape, but its face was ferocious and ferocious. Just like a Xianxia. Although its body was only about 10 feet tall, there was clearly a pair of huge wings on its back. They flapped slightly, supporting its body lightly in the air. This was clearly the corpse that Yi Xian had picked the first nine-eyed golden crystal from the corpse pool. It was the corpse that was facing up, its mouth wide open, and the corpse flower that had nurtured the nine-eyed golden crystal grew from its roots. At this moment, the figure raised his left hand high up in the air, and the huge, weird and ancient golden bow that was gradually disappearing proved this point. In that instant, Yi Xian came to a realization. As it turned out, the reason why the corpse flower grew out of its mouth was not because someone was using a corpse to nurture the flower. Judging from the corpse flower's golden crystal fruit that contained the fallen sky bow's divine ability, the birth of the corpse flower and the formation of the nine-eyed golden crystal in the flower disk was clearly influenced by a strand of obsession left behind by the existence that floated in the corpse pool. Only then could it be realized. However, did such a powerful being from the primordial era die in the end? Then, who was it that threw its corpse into this endless corpse pool? Furthermore, were all the other corpses in the corpse pond also supreme existences of the same level as it? It was also what he was seeing right now. Although it was incomparably vivid, in reality, it was in this monstrous battle that happened countless years ago. Had he fallen? Then, what was the meaning of this battle? What was the reason? What was the result in the end? As questions continuously surfaced in his mind, Yi Xian was completely at a loss. His gaze gradually blurred, and he shifted his gaze away from the supreme expert who had left behind the fallen soul bow's inheritance. Just like that, he slowly swept his gaze across the battlefield in a daze. A land of endless slaughter with the boundless starry sky as the background. Suddenly, Yi Xian's pupils constricted. His originally dull and sluggish consciousness also instantly sobered up at this moment. Even his body violently shook, and cold sweat faintly appeared on his back. It was another familiar figure. Moreover, this figure, even at this moment, was still entangling him. It was a kind of uneasiness, as if there was a dagger on his back. At the edge of this galactic battlefield, in an area where there were fewer desolate antiquity creatures, Yi Xian clearly saw a blood-red figure lurking on the back of a huge dead star. The illusory state of the energy body, the huge size of a small meteor, and the appearance of an ordinary ape, except for the strange shape of a bloodhorn on the top of its head. Everything was so familiar. This was clearly the statue that was embedded on the cliff at the bottom of the valley in the forbidden area of the Demon Emperor planet. This was clearly the owner of the weeping soul bloodhorn that had always been in Yi Xian's undying world, but could not be found no matter how hard he tried. This was clearly a giant weeping soul beast with a bloodhorn. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Yi Xian instantly felt unwell. This weeping soul beast with a bloodhorn was actually a supreme existence from the desolate antiquity era. No wonder even the 9-star Ladybird Emperor in the Black Hole of Life did not have the slightest intention to resist when facing its aura. But this was not the key point. The key point was that in this monstrous war that broke out countless years ago in the desolate antiquity era, all the other desolate antiquity creatures seemed to have fallen, including the original owner of the fallen sky bow that Yi Xian obtained, the supreme existence with the power to destroy a part of the sky with a single arrow, had also fallen. But this weeping soul beast with a bloodhorn was clearly an exception. Even though its original illusory body might have already dissipated, the weeping soul bloodhorn that was left behind clearly contained some sort of mystery. Otherwise, how could this horn be so strange as to be able to freely enter and exit the undying world within Yi Xian's body? Even hunting the 9-star Ladybird Emperor and absorbing its energy crystal body for its own use? Could it be that this weeping soul beast with a bloodhorn really did not fall in that battle back then? Was it sealed in the Demon Emperor Forbidden Ground where the corpse pond was located together with the corpses of all the experts who had fallen in that battle? Then, what was the matter with the statue embedded in the cliff of the mountain deep in the Forbidden Valley of the Demon Emperor planet? Was it its original body that was sealed? Was it detected by some kind of power when it was trying to escape from the Demon Emperor Forbidden Ground and was directly sealed in the cliff of the mountain? Then, what was the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn that appeared in the Weeping Soul Cave under the Black Mountain Star? Who was it that set up the altar and sealed the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn there? While his body was shaking violently, Xianxia's eyes were always fixed on the Weeping Soul Beast in the distant corner of the void in front of him, but in an instant, a series of tangled questions flashed through his mind. All of this made him feel as if his head was about to split apart, as if his sea of consciousness was about to explode. Confusing and confusing. He had thought about it, and even hoped that all this was just him being oversensitive, but in fact, it was simply impossible. Leaving aside everything that had already appeared in reality, such as the statue in the Forbidden Valley of the Demon Emperor planet, the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn in the Weeping Soul Cave under the Black Mountain Star, the 9-star Ladybird Emperor's death, and the blood-red Weeping Soul Horn that he had been looking for all over his body but could not find. Even if all of this was put aside for the time being, the strange scene that entered Xianxia's line of sight was still enough to prove that this blood-horned Weeping Soul beast was unfathomable. At this moment, in the vast battlefield of the stars, countless creatures of the remote antiquity era were all fighting fiercely. Only this Weeping Soul beast, which was like a small meteor, was quietly hiding behind a huge dead star, secretly looking at the entire vast battlefield of the stars. His demeanor and actions clearly showed that he was trying to pry into her. Why didn't it fight? What was the purpose of hiding like a ghost? What was the purpose or scheme? As he stared blankly at all of this, Xian suddenly felt that the countless primordial creatures in the boundless starry sky were fighting to the extreme, and the bloodhorn Weeping Soul beast was silently hiding in a remote corner of the battlefield. Gue Chong was spying on them to the extreme. When these two images entered his eyes at the same time, the stark contrast caused him to inexplicably feel a chill in his heart. It was also at this moment that the Weeping Soul beast, who was hiding in the shadow of the huge dead star, seemed to feel something and slowly turned its head to look at Xian. A mysterious smile appeared at the corner of its mouth. Chapter 29:11. Double Advancement Boom. Just as Xian's line of sight and the inheritance scene converged with the bloodhorn Weeping Soul beast at the edge of the blood-colored void battlefield, a loud explosion suddenly sounded out, directly blasting Xian's consciousness out of the inheritance scene that originated from the primordial era. It even caused his own consciousness to withdraw from his sea of consciousness and open his eyes. At this moment, an extremely strong light of shock burst out from Xian's eyes. Only now did he realize that his back was covered in cold sweat. It was even more so for his forehead. As a cultivator with a background of the starry sky, if it wasn't for the fact that his mind had suffered such a huge change and shock, such a situation definitely wouldn't have occurred. From this, it could be seen how astonished Xian was. There was a conspiracy. What a huge conspiracy. It was related to the primordial era and had continued to this day. It even involved Xian himself. If there was a string that connected all of this, then this string was undoubtedly the bloodhorn Weeping Soul beast. However, what he saw earlier was clearly the scene of the primordial memory inheritance contained within the 9-pupil golden crystal. Even though this scene really did exist, it was in the primordial past countless years ago after all. Under such circumstances, how could the bloodhorn Weeping Soul beast in the inheritance image sense his existence? Furthermore, its blood-red eyes, which were filled with an endlessly strange aura, could actually meet his gaze in reality? That was impossible. But that fleeting exchange of glances was so real. Even if Xian didn't want to believe it, he couldn't deny it. Damn it! What was the reason for all this? What secrets are they hiding? The more he thought about it, the more pain he felt in his head. He wanted to stop thinking about it, but he couldn't help but start thinking about it again. All of this infuriated Xian. Fortunately, Xian suddenly heard the familiar sound of a system notification in his mind, instantly diverting his attention. Ding! Congratulations, host! His cultivation base had increased. Current cultivation base. Meteor level 2. Ding! Congratulations, host! Source core level upgrade. Current level. Level 6. You have obtained a mind power secret technique. Would you like to activate it immediately? The successive system notifications instantly improved Yi Xian's gloomy mood. His cultivation base and source core level had both increased at the same time. This was something that had never happened before. This time, Yi Xian hadn't absorbed the source energy of the star core to cultivate the void fragment art. He hadn't absorbed the source energy of the demon's brain or the weeping soul beast's illusory body to condense his source core. However, his source core level and cultivation base level had both. Was a pleasant surprise. However, although the accident came suddenly, Yi Xian immediately understood the reason behind it after pondering for a moment. It was obvious that all of this was because of the nine-eyed golden crystal. After the nine-eyed golden crystal's high-grade source energy had been absorbed by the devouring system, all of it had been injected into the source core in Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. The extremely high grade of this pure source energy had caused his source core to undergo a metamorphosis. Leveling up from level 5 to level 6 was simply a matter of course. As for the breakthrough in cultivation, it was partly because Yi Xian had absorbed quite a bit of the star core's source energy and had been accumulating it in his body the entire time. All he lacked was an opportunity to break through. Absorbing the nine-eyed golden crystal had been the best opportunity for a breakthrough. After all, the nine-eyed golden crystal didn't only contain the source energy of the star core. Yi Xian had already discovered that there was some other pure energy contained within it. After all, the nine-eyed golden crystal had been grown from the flesh of an ancient powerhouse. It couldn't possibly be just the source energy of the star core. As for these pure energies that weren't spiritual origin energy, after being absorbed, it was obvious that they were the same as the source of the star core. They were directly used on Yi Xian's main cultivation technique, which was the cultivation of the void insight fragment. Therefore, his cultivation in this aspect had also unexpectedly advanced. Overjoyed, Yi Xian immediately felt the power within his body. Sure enough, even though he had only advanced from the first level of the meteor realm to the second level, the higher his cultivation level was, It was also only a small breakthrough. However, compared to before, the change in his strength after advancing and before advancing was even more obvious. At the moment, he could clearly feel that his body was full of surging power. His entire body was in an excellent state, which was simply unprecedented. As for the mind source core in his sea of consciousness, it had undergone its fifth transformation and entered the sixth stage. Due to the increase in the source energy it contained, its volume had become much denser. Therefore, the mind source core had shrunk once again. It was now the size of a green bean, but there was a thick layer of purple around it. Its original black color had become fainter and fainter, to the point where it was almost undetectable. After a careful examination, Yi Xian's mood had completely recovered. The haze from before had been thrown to the back of his mind. Then, he immediately ordered the system to activate the mind power secret technique that he had obtained after his mind source core had evolved to the sixth stage. If there was anything that Yi Xian wasn't satisfied with about this simultaneous breakthrough in his source core grade and cultivation base, it was obviously the mind power secret technique that he had obtained this time. Previously, he had always hoped that when his source core evolved to the sixth stage, he would be able to obtain some sort of remarkable ability related to the use of mind power. However, this hope had clearly been dashed. What Yi Xian had obtained was still the same as before. It was some sort of secret technique related to the use of mind power. However, it was still better than nothing. At the very least, it was much better than nothing. At the very least, it was much better than nothing when his mind source core had evolved to the fifth stage. Previously, when Yi Xian's mind source core had been reconstructed and evolved from the fourth stage to the fifth stage, it had still required some time and accumulation before the fourth transformation was complete. However, when he had encountered the Mad Mosquito Emperor on the Mosquito Beast Star and obtained his help, he had immediately skipped this process. However, perhaps due to the interference of external forces during that transformation, when the countless fragments of the jelly-like mind source core in Yi Xian's mind had once again condensed into a crystalline source, Yi Xian had not heard any system notification that he had obtained any sort of mind power secret technique or mind power secret technique. At the time, he had been worried that there wouldn't be any in the future. However, after the fifth transformation of his source core, he had obtained another mind power secret technique, which had finally made him relax a little. Plus, the mind power secret technique that he had obtained when his source core evolved to the sixth stage was more or less stronger than the mind suppression secret technique that he had obtained when his source core had evolved to the fourth stage. This was enough for him. Chapter 29:12. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Spiritual Thunder Technique, ding. Congratulations to the host. Activation successful. You have obtained the secret technique of spiritual power. Spiritual Thunder Technique. As the familiar sound of the devouring system rang in his mind, Yi Xian, who was full of anticipation, was immediately stunned. Spiritual Thunder Technique? Spiritual power could actually evolve into a lightning-shaped attack? Yi Xian had never heard of this before. Generally speaking, there were two types of lightning-type attacks. One was to grasp a certain level of the law of lightning and use lightning-type divine abilities to directly trigger the lightning-type attacks in the void. The other type was to use special lightning-type magic treasures to attack. These lightning-type magic treasures first had to be refined with lightning-type materials. After the refinement was completed, one had to go to some starry sky thunderpool or some stars or regions in the void of the universe where lightning-type energy was rich and filled with endless lightning-type energy all year round. After the lightning-type energy was refined, one could freely use this lightning-type magic treasure to launch lightning-type attacks in battle. Yi Xian had only obtained a secret technique of using spiritual power. Obviously, it was impossible for him to obtain any lightning-type magic treasures. Similarly, since it was a secret technique, it was impossible for it to be like the lightning-type divine ability, where one could use one's understanding of the law of lightning to directly trigger the lightning-type energy in the void of the universe for one's own use and attack as one pleased. Therefore, if he was not mistaken, this so-called spiritual lightning technique was most likely a technique that directly used his spiritual origin energy as energy. After some complicated elemental evolution and transformation, the spiritual origin energy would be transformed into the power of lightning, and then used to launch an attack. Although it was not as easy to use as the lightning-type divine ability and did not consume much spiritual power, it was at least much more convenient than relying on lightning-type magic treasures to launch a lightning-type attack. As long as one had enough spiritual origin energy, there was no need to go around collecting lightning-type energy. Furthermore, one had to refine the energy before using it as one pleased. All in all, Yi Xian was quite satisfied. Soon, Yi Xian's mind was immersed in his knowledge sea. Two balls of energy of different colors were reflected in his vision. These two balls of light floated silently in the air above his knowledge sea. Unlike the spirit source core, the void essence crystal, and the strange little golden bow in the distance, they were unusually quiet. The two balls of light contained pure inheritance information. The purplish-green ball of light contained the essence of the spiritual lightning technique, a secret technique that Yi Xian had obtained after his mind source core had undergone its fifth metamorphosis and reached level 6. As for the other ball of golden energy, it contained the primordial divine ability, Heaven Falling Bow, that Yi Xian had inherited from the perfect nine-eyed golden crystal. The Heaven Falling Bow, which sounded like an arrow-type magic treasure's divine ability, was rather strange. The entire divine ability was like an imprint, and that imprint was the strange little golden bow that was currently floating in the north of Yi Xian's knowledge sea. This ball of golden energy was the specific method to activate the divine ability imprint in the shape of a small golden bow. It could be said that whether it was the main body of the Heaven Fallen Bow's divine ability, the small bow, or the golden ball of energy in front of Yi Xian, both of them were the key to successfully executing the Heaven Fallen Bow's unique primordial divine ability. Neither of them could be missing. Yi Xian extended his consciousness and sank it into the golden ball of light. Soon, a large amount of obscure and mysterious runes covered the sky and covered the earth as they swept towards his consciousness. As expected of a powerful divine ability from the primordial era, Yi Xian had never imagined such a huge amount of rune information before. There was no doubt that it would take far more than a short period of time to completely master and comprehend this primordial divine ability, Heaven Falling Bow. Under such circumstances, Yi Xian gave it some thought and quickly dismissed the idea of immediately comprehending it. Soon, the strand of consciousness that he had extended earlier quickly withdrew from the golden ball of light. Yi Xian planned to find some free time to properly comprehend the Heaven Falling Bow's divine ability. As for now, he planned to devote all his energy to comprehending the secret technique of spiritual power that he had just obtained, which was the spiritual thunderbolt technique. There was no doubt that the power of the spiritual thunderbolt technique was much weaker than that of the Heaven Falling Bow. This was obvious just from the fact that the spiritual thunderbolt technique was a secret technique of using spiritual power, while the Heaven Falling Bow was a divine ability that was passed down from the distant primordial era. However, for Yi Xian, the primordial divine ability named Heaven Falling Bow was far less practical and important than the spiritual thunderbolt technique, which was merely a secret technique. Perhaps this was one of the main reasons why Yi Xian immediately threw this matter to the back of his mind when he discovered that it seemed to be a rather troublesome matter to successfully use the heaven-falling bow's divine ability. At this moment, as the strand of consciousness that he had extended into the golden ball of light retracted, Yi Xian did not hesitate at all, and immediately sent this strand of consciousness into another ball of light that was suffused with a dark purple color. Similarly, as soon as his strand of consciousness entered the ball of light, a large amount of cryptic rune information swept toward Yi Xian's consciousness. Although the amount was still enormous, if it was compared to the enormous amount of rune information within the golden energy ball from before, it was obviously much, much less. They were simply not existences of the same level. Yi Xian roughly estimated that based on the amount of cryptic rune information contained in the dark purple ball of light, he would be able to completely grasp the secret technique of using spiritual power within half a day at the latest. In terms of time, it was obviously acceptable. After confirming this, Yi Xian's entire body seemed to instantly become excited. He didn't hesitate any longer and poured all of his attention into it. Very quickly, he entered a profound state where he forgot about everything and wandered around in this mystical world where spiritual energy was used as a secret technique. Time passed slowly. Yi Xian, who was completely immersed in the profound method of using spiritual power contained in the dark purple ball of light, had completely lost consciousness of time. Unknowingly, a full 3 days had passed. This had far exceeded his initial estimate of the time he would need to comprehend the spiritual thunderbolt technique. Fortunately, although the original estimate of time had been extended by several times, it was only 3 days. For Yi Xian, who could spend an entire month in this mysterious Saint Devil Forbidden Area's void, it was barely acceptable. Chapter 29:13. Corpse flames soaring into the sky. Boom. Zlala. Crack. Just as Yi Xian's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened without any warning, an invisible energy shockwave strangely rippled out from his eyes. It was extremely fast, and with a strange power that surged through the void, it actually shot to the edge of the skeletal island beneath him in the blink of an eye. It arrived in an instant. Almost at the same time, at the edge of the skeletal island, a small purple lightning ball suddenly exploded without any warning. Weak purple lightning arcs instantly scattered in all directions, emitting a dense sizzling sound that made one's scalp tingle. This egg-sized purple lightning ball, as well as the spider web of purple lightning that appeared after the lightning ball exploded, was the result of Yi Xian's first small attempt after he completely comprehended the spiritual lightning technique. It had to be said that Yi Xian was very satisfied with the effect of this small attempt. Although the dark purple ball of lightning that exploded was very small, like the size of an egg, and the pearl net purple lightning that burst forth after the ball of lightning exploded only covered an area of about 10 feet in radius. As for the actual lethality of this lightning ball and the spider web of purple lightning, it was even more insignificant. However, to Yi Xian, he was already very satisfied to be able to achieve such an effect in a short period of time. Not to mention that he'd only used a small amount of his spiritual energy to condense this lightning ball. If it was necessary, once Yi Xian used his full strength and didn't care about the consumption of his spiritual energy, with his current strength and foundation in terms of spiritual energy, he would be able to condense a rather large ball of lightning. Once it exploded, the power would be far from what he'd experienced for the first time. It could be said that if Yi Xian were to really go all out and use this kind of spiritual lightning technique with all his strength, even if he was only at the second level of the meteor realm, the instantaneous attack power he would be able to display would still be quite impressive. It could be said that in an instant, Yi Xian's overall combat strength had increased by a level. However, these thoughts only appeared briefly in his mind before they were quickly thrown to the back of his mind. In fact, the real reason why Yi Xian was so anxious to master this spiritual lightning technique immediately had nothing to do with increasing his combat strength. His goal was this vast and boundless black corpse pool. To be precise, it was the countless corpses of primordial creatures that floated in this boundless corpse pool. Everything that had happened before had already allowed Yi Xian to have a certain understanding of this corpse pool. At the very least, Yi Xian already knew how the multi-eyed thought crystals were formed, what kind of incentives were needed to cause the corpse flower to appear, and how the multi-eyed thought crystals were born. Although Yi Xian was unable to understand the specific principle, it did not affect his next plan. Obviously, as long as the corpse flower appeared, then the multi-pupil thought crystals that Yi Xian needed would be in his hands. As for the trigger for the corpse flower to appear, it was obviously the endless corpse gas that filled the air above the corpse pool. After it was ignited by the corpse lightning that burst forth after the corpse lightning exploded, it formed a corpse flame. However, Although this strange corpse pool could be said to be vast and boundless, the probability of the corpse lightning bursting forth was obviously not very high. If he were to sit there and wait, he was afraid that he might not be able to see the next corpse lightning bursting forth even after a month of training. Xian naturally could not sit there and do nothing. That was not his usual style at all. Since the probability of the corpse lightning bursting forth could not be predicted and could not be controlled at will, then, at the very most, he could change his method of thinking and use the lightning to ignite the corpse gas that filled the air above the corpse pool. Wasn't it just a matter of lighting a fire? If this corpse pool was not so vast, and Xian had to obtain as many multi-pupil thought crystals as possible within this short period of less than a month, this would not be a problem at all. The reason why there was an almost negligible amount of corpse gas at the edge of the 100-mile radius area where the corpse flame raged was because before the corpse lightning burst forth from the corpse pool below, there was a gust of wind that swept the corpse gas in the air above the pool. When the corpse lightning burst forth from the corpse pool below, it was so strong that the corpse gas was blown away by the sudden rise of the corpse flame. With a gleam in his eyes, Xian rose into the air from the skeleton island. As he rushed back the way he came, he muttered to himself and deduced all the details of the entire plan. Right now, I am using the spiritual lightning technique to ignite the corpse gas. Before the lightning ball explodes and the lightning bursts forth, there is absolutely no precursor effect. In this case, I only need to start from the center of the corpse pool that faces the crater above. Then, the corpse flame will burn in the center of the pool and quickly spread in all directions. What I need to do is wait for the corpse flame in the center to extinguish because of the consumption of the corpse gas. Then, I will descend and start to collect the multi-pupil thought crystals from the center. As the corpse flame in the surrounding areas extinguishes, I will gradually go deeper into the corpse pool. In terms of manpower, I obviously can't take care of this vast pool of corpses by myself. When the time comes, I'll just summon the Black Wind and the Dongshu shuttle and let Gue Hai Yi Dao lead the entire army of fiend slaves to harvest the corpses. Anyway, no matter what, this time, I have to take as many multi-pupil thought crystals as possible. After all, even if I have another chance to enter the Saint Devil Forbidden Land in the future, it will be at least 100 years later. If I don't have enough multi-pupil thought crystals, I'm afraid I won't be able to wait that long even if I give the Star Superbrain fragment away. As Xian kept muttering to himself, he sped all the way. Soon, he finally returned to the area facing the crater above the corpse pool. Almost 4 days have passed since the 1-month deadline. I can't waste any more time. Xian hesitated for a moment as he stood in the air above the pool. In the end, he clenched his teeth and threw away the last bit of misgivings in his heart. As he muttered to himself, he clenched his teeth and waved his hand towards the corpse pool below. Rumble! Crack! Zzz! On the way back, more than a dozen spiritual energy lightning balls that were condensed from quite a bit of spiritual energy origin energy shot out from Xian's hands. In the blink of an eye, they reached the height of the pool where the corpse aura was the densest, and immediately exploded without any suspense, releasing streaks of dark purple electric nets that emitted a mysterious aura. In a few breaths of time, the large amount of corpse aura that filled the pool below was instantly ignited. Chapter 29:14. The fruit picker has arrived. Xian originally thought that the black corpse gas floating above the corpse pond would start to burn from the center of the ring-shaped mountain pass. Then, the fire would slowly spread out in all directions. However, the reality was far beyond Xian's expectations. As he threw down more than a dozen spiritual power thunderballs, they exploded and burst into a dark purple electric net. As a result, a large area of corpse gas was ignited in an instant. Just the range of Xian's perception was already more than 1,000 miles away. It was impossible to estimate how far the corpse pond had been ignited. It was very likely that the black corpse gas that filled the entire vast corpse pool had been ignited in an instant. The fire below him instantly ignited. Xian was shocked. He quickly increased his speed and rushed out of the ring-shaped mountain pass at the first moment. Boom! Almost in the next instant, a huge pillar of fire with a diameter of more than 1,000 miles gushed out of the ring-shaped mountain pass like it was biting its tail. It soared into the sky at least 1,000 miles away, almost turning half of the sky red. However, this red was obviously strange. After all, it was ignited by corpse gas. Within the red, there was a touch of gray and black. Clearly, the fire was soaring into the sky, but what hit him was a cold aura. This should be because it was burning corpse gas, and the quantity was extremely large. Xian subconsciously retreated a distance before stopping. His expression was already somewhat sluggish as he stared blankly at the gigantic pillar of flames in front of him. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart as he nervously muttered to himself, "This commotion seems to be a bit big. Could something have happened?" Obviously, no one could answer this question. The only thing Yi Xian could do now was to wait. If he didn't wait for this level of fire to be extinguished before continuing, even if he hid in the Dongshu shuttle and sneaked into the ring-shaped mountain pass, he estimated that he wouldn't be able to hold on for long before he had to retreat. There are only 20 days left in the month. This fire shouldn't be burning for too long, right? Realizing this problem, Yi Xian immediately became even more nervous. After a while, he faintly sighed and comforted himself. At the very least, the corpse chi in the central area of the corpse pond below the ring-shaped mountain pass should be exhausted soon. After all, there is an open ring-shaped mountain pass above, and the corpse aura is slowly leaking out, so the concentration of the corpse aura is not very high. If one were to climb to an endless height from the enormous crater Yi Xian was currently in, and finally look down, the scene one would see was actually not a celestial body. Instead, it was a broken continent. This continent was like a complete vessel that had been smashed to the ground, breaking into countless pieces of varying sizes. Some of these large and small fragments were connected to each other, while some were isolated and did not come into contact with any other fragments. However, the gaps between the large and small fragments were not oceans, but the void, a chaotic void filled with turbulence. In addition, this entire continent formed by fragments was surrounded by a layer of void filled with turbulence. Like an isolation belt, the entire continent was separated from the boundless void of the Milky Way outside. It was like being exiled, imprisoned. This was a land of exile, a land that had been completely smashed, fragmented, and separated from the original boundless void of the Milky Way. The fragment that Yi Xian was in happened to be located in the central area of this vast continent. It was the largest of all the fragments that made up this continent. And that crater was located in the center of this largest fragment. At this moment, if one looked carefully, even at such a height, one could see that in the center of this largest fragment, there seemed to be a small red that suddenly appeared. This red dot was the pillar of corpse chi that rose into the sky from the crater of the crater. Such a huge pillar of corpse chi, even at such a terrifying height, could be seen as a small red. Then, in this mysterious continent formed by countless fragments below, it was naturally more eye-catching. Although there were very few living creatures in this mysterious continent, it was not that there were none. At this moment, as this huge pillar of red flame rose into the sky, there were some existences in all directions of the crater. In an instant, they were attracted, and one by one, they cast their eyes over. Some of them quickly retracted their aura again, as if they were not very interested in this, but a small number of them, one after another, all rushed towards the area where the huge pillar of flame was located. Some of them were extremely far away, and between the largest fragment where the huge crater was located, there was more than a chaotic void filled with space-time turbulence between them and the largest fragment where the huge crater was located. They could only go around time and time again. Obviously, it was impossible to reach their destination in a short time, and it was even possible that they would never reach their destination. However, there were also a few figures who were destined to arrive at the ring-shaped mountain region. This was because they were all on the same fragment. Although the distance between them varied, as long as they didn't give up, they would definitely arrive at the ring-shaped mountain region of the Grand Junction region of this fragment after speeding all the way. In the entire fragment, there were nearly 100 living creatures who paid attention when the huge pillar of flame rose into the sky, but at this moment, because of the interest, there were only a dozen or so that were rushing over here. Most of them were at the edge of the fragment. With the vastness of this fragment, no matter how fast they were, it would take them a certain amount of time to reach the crater, at least 10 days. And the other half, a total of 3 existences, were not too far away from the crater, and the nearest one could reach within half a day. This was a 4 seasons jade-eyed tiger. In terms of size, compared to ordinary tiger beasts, it only had 2 extra pairs of fleshy horns on its back. In addition, its eyes were also green, with a cold light. Apart from that, it was the proportion. This 4 seasons jade-eyed tiger was nearly 10 meters long, and could not be compared to ordinary tiger beasts at all. As the saying goes, it is like a tiger with extra wings, but this ferocious beast not only had wings, but also 2 pairs. In addition to its huge body of nearly 10 meters, there was no doubt that its degree of ferocity was extraordinary. At this moment, this 4 seasons jade-eyed tiger was flapping the 2 pairs of huge wings on its back, spreading out its extreme speed. It had identified the area in front of it where the red pillar of flame rose into the sky, and was rushing over in the void. Its speed was extremely frightening, so fast that its whole body seemed to have turned into a dim flowing arrow. Every moment, it was greatly reducing the distance between it and the flame pillar area in front of it. If there were no accidents, this Four Seasons jade-eyed tiger would reach the edge of the huge crater where Xian was located in at most half a day. Xian was completely unaware of all this. Chapter 29:15. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Who's afraid of you? Ding! Discovered a large number of multi-pupil sense crystals. Do you want to absorb the power of the sense crystals immediately? As Xian took out all the multi-pupil sense crystals except for the 8-pupil silver crystal and 9-pupil gold crystal from his undying world and threw them to the engulfing system, a notification rang in Xian's head. Without the slightest hesitation, Xian directly gave an affirmative response. However, he emphasized that he had the devouring system transfer all of the energy absorbed from the multi-eyed thought crystals to the immortal superbrain fragment that was the center of his personal star communication system. The so-called power of the sense crystals was similar to the power of the origin of spirit, but there were some differences. When Xian collected the perfect 9-pupil gold crystal, the engulfing system had absorbed a more complex composition of energy. 90% of it was the power of the origin of spirit, while the remaining 10% consisted of a few different types of energy. Other multi-pupil sense crystals and even the lower-grade demonic sense star crystals had different levels of energy, but they were all in the same ratio. It was like this kind of sense crystal. If there were no different types of energy gathered in the same ratio, it would not be able to truly form. As for that immortal-level starry sky superbrain fragment, it just so happened to need this kind of consciousness crystal. Xian had tried to give it a star core crystal or a devil cultivator's brain to absorb, but it didn't even sniff it. In order to allow this piece of the star brain to grow as quickly as possible, Xian had always been throwing ordinary demonic sense star crystals at it. He used a large amount, but it didn't have any obvious effect. This time, there were more than 100 high-grade perception crystals, which were multi-pupil perception crystals, and all of them were thrown in. In Xian's opinion, that immortal-level starbrain fragment would at least have some meaning and grow a little stronger. If the situation was the same as before when he threw out a large amount of normal-grade magic astral crystals, Xian would probably be so angry that he would vomit blood on the spot. As for the dozen or so 8-eyed silver crystals and 9-eyed golden crystals in his hands, it wasn't that Xian didn't plan to give them to this immortal-level starbrain fragment to absorb. However, considering that this fellow was only a small fragment right now, it was obvious that he still had a long way to go if he wanted to grow into a complete immortal-level superbrain. Therefore, from the very beginning, it was not appropriate to give him such top-notch goods with 8 or 9 pupils. It would spoil the child and cause him to become picky. It would be troublesome in the future. After doing all of this, Xian moved closer to the huge ring-shaped mountain in front of him and looked at the intensity of the fire. Although the pillar of flames that soared into the sky seemed to be a little small, it still existed. From the looks of it, it wouldn't be extinguished for a while. Frustrated, Xian could only turn around and return. However, waiting was not a solution. He might as well take advantage of this time to look around. As this thought popped up in his mind, he could not help but think of how Feng Feng, Zuoliqing, and the other 9 Black Mosquito Tribe prospective saints. He wondered where they were now. The others were not important, but the key was Zuoliqing. Xian was still very concerned about him. On one hand, he wanted to take this opportunity to get rid of him. After all, if Xian was not so lucky, he would have died in the black hole area. If he did not take revenge for this, how could he cultivate and defy the heavens? In addition, Xian had always kept Mo Qigong's secret instructions to Zuoliqing in mind. He always felt that this matter must be related to him. He did not know what tricks Mo Qigong was playing. If he could meet Zuoliqing, he would have to force this matter out of him before he killed him. However, looking at the vastness of this mysterious world, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack to find a specific person without any clues. Xian did not have high expectations. With a wave of his hand, the void shuttle was summoned from the undying world within his body. Xian immediately stepped in, and with a thought, he directly activated the shuttle to transform into a wisp of light that pierced through the air and sped away. With the extreme speed of the Dongshu shuttle, the distance behind them was already very far in just a short 2 hours. However, as they sped over, the environment that Xian saw through the warship's porthole didn't change at all. It was similar to the surroundings of the enormous ring-shaped mountain range. They were all boundless mountains that rose and fell continuously. It exuded a boundless sense of ancientness, but not a single lynx or bird could be seen. Clearly, the mountains were green and exuded a dense aura of life, but it also seemed like a true land of death, where all living beings had already gone extinct. Just as Xianxia was feeling very disappointed, in the void in front of him, there was suddenly a rumbling sound of thunder. It seemed that there was something, and it was rushing in this direction at an extreme speed. And the other party was obviously very arrogant. It did not hide its aura at all. It was because of this that when it came at such an extreme speed, such an intense rumbling sound of thunder could be heard from so far away. This was clearly caused by the aura emitted from the other party's body, which was rushing into the void at an extreme speed. All of this had happened too suddenly. Either they couldn't see a single kitten or puppy for a long time, or they could see such a terrifying existence. The contrast was too great. Caught off guard, Xianxia was stunned. Fortunately, the other party was still far away. At least from where Xianxia was at the moment, he could not see any figure in the void at all. Only the sound of rolling thunder could be heard. But this also showed how terrifying and powerful the other party was. Before the person arrived, the rumbling sound of thunder caused by the rapidly spreading aura had already traveled such a long distance. Perhaps even a black hole stage 9th perfection expert would not be able to do this. What was worse was that the other party was obviously coming in this direction. It was most likely because he saw the huge pillar of corpse chi behind them. In other words, this guy was here to pick the fruit. He had met a villain. Thinking of this, Xianxia was immediately angry. The endless corpse aura in the huge crater was ignited by him. In that case, the countless beautiful corpse flowers blooming on the deep lake in the mountain belly at this moment were actually the result of his hard work. This incomparably arrogant guy in front of him actually wanted to reap without sowing. Simply shameless. Does he really think I am easy to bully? Previously, in the demon domain, he had to be cautious and keep a low profile. But now, in this sealed world, there was no need to be afraid of exposing his identity. If a fight really broke out, who knows who was afraid of who? Ba Chai, go out immediately, hide yourself and rush forward. See if you can sense the other party's cultivation. Once you have a result, come back immediately. Chapter 29:16. All troops prepare for battle. As soon as Ba Chai left, Xianxia stepped out of the void hole shuttle and put it away with a wave of his hand. He immediately deployed the Black Mosquito and Black Wind. At the same time, he activated a concealment array. As soon as the two enormous bastions appeared, they immediately concealed themselves and disappeared into thin air. The reason why Xianxia took out the two space fortresses, the Black Mosquito and the Black Wind, was to allow the concealed Black Mosquito and the Black Wind to participate in the upcoming battle. Of course, they would be on the periphery, using the bastion's unique star-obliterating cannons to provide long-range suppressive fire. Xianxia couldn't wait any longer when he thought of the fiery battle that would ensue. In truth, he'd had this idea for a long time. After all, anyone who suddenly got a super-powerful toy like a bastion would want to test its power at the first opportunity. Unfortunately, Xianxia didn't have the chance to do so from beginning to end. When he was in the graveyard domain of the third universe, he was apprehensive of the other bastions of the Demonkin scouts. He was afraid that they would leak the news of the Black Mosquito's fall. When he got the Black Wind, he immediately fell into a wormhole. After that, when he arrived in the first universe where the Demonkin's ancestral land was, Xianxia didn't dare to rashly try. After all, a bastion's superstar obliterating cannons would cause a huge commotion. Moreover, when they investigated the energy fluctuations left behind in the void, they could immediately determine that it was the energy left behind by a bastion's superstar obliterating cannons. In the Demonkin domain, bastions were not like private warships. In fact, the same was true for human technology. Therefore, the final result of the investigation would be that a bastion of unknown origin had appeared in the Demonkin domain. This was no small matter. If it was reported, the Celestial clan would be alarmed. After all, if the Celestial clan could send Demonkin scouts to the third universe's wormhole to gather information, then the humans of the third universe could do the same. Under such circumstances, the entire Demonkin domain would be plunged into chaos. Even if Xianxia had the mental strength unique to the Demonkin, there was still a chance that he would be exposed in the Celestial clan's investigation. Because of this, although Xianxia had obtained the Black Mosquito and Black Wind for a long time now, He had never had the opportunity to test the power of the superstar obliterating cannons. Today, however, he had a rare encounter with a villain in this relatively safe sealed void. Yi Xian couldn't let such a golden opportunity slip away. Black wind, and the superstar obliterating cannons of the ship's black wind. Immediately, black wind and the black mosquito, the black and the black mosquito, black wind and the black mosquito for black wind and the black mosquitoes to begin charging the bastion, as possible. Just as he finished explaining all of this, Ba Chai's figure appeared in the air in front of the black mosquito ship. Yi Xian immediately opened the black mosquito ship's light screen and let Ba Chai enter. Master, the enemy is very strong. He should be around origin rank 4. As soon as Yi Xian emerged from the spatial door at the top of the black mosquito, Ba Chai immediately reported the results of his investigation. Moreover, with his speed, he'll be here in 3 minutes. What? Yi Xian was caught off guard when he heard this, and his expression immediately changed. Origin rank 4. That was the middle stage of the origin realm. Although Yi Xian had 2 supreme existences at the origin realm under his command, one was the Mosquito Beast Emperor, Shui Ben, and the other was the 8-star King Ladle that he had brought out from the black hole of life not long ago. The Mosquito Prince, Shui Hui, was only origin rank 1. As for the 8-star Wang Ladle, due to the fact that the Void Soldier Ladle was an existence between life and non-life, there was no way to determine their strength with the universal realm of the starry sky. Therefore, the 8-star Wang Ladle was at the origin realm. Not to mention Yi Xian, even it didn't know. However, it was certain that it was stronger than the Mosquito Prince. As for how much stronger, there was no way to know. If it was origin rank 2, there's no time to consider. If we let him roar away, the countless multi-pupil perception crystals in the corpse pool will be completely wasted. When he thought about the large amount of multi-eyed perception crystals behind him, Yi Xian clenched his teeth and instantly made a decision. His figure flashed as he rushed out of the black mosquito ship and summoned the Mosquito Beast Prince with a wave of his hand. Then, he raised his hand and waved his hand, shooting 2 spiritual imprints at the black mosquito and the black wind. 2 black light veil channels immediately appeared on the 2 spaceships. Then, 1,000 black mosquito demonic beasts rushed out of the black light veil channel at the bottom of the black mosquito ship. All of them were at the black hole realm. Yi Xian had brought 5,000 mosquito beasts of this level out of the 10 million mosquito beasts he had brought out from the mosquito planet. This time, he had only mobilized 1/5 of them. On the other side, 1,000 figures rushed out from the bottom of the black wind. They were 1,000 2-meter-tall void ladles, and all of them were black hole realm 7-star ladles. Among the 100,000 void ladles Yi Xian had brought out from the black hole realm, there were also 5,000 6-star and 7-star black hole realm ladles. However, there were more 6-star ladles at the galaxy realm, 3,000 at the 6-star ladles, while only 2,000 at the 7-star ladles at the black hole realm. This time, he had mobilized half of them. Leading the 1,707-star general ladles was the origin realm Wang Ladle, an 8-star general ladle who was much stronger than the Mosquito Emperor Shui Ben. Soon, all the troops Yi Xian had dispatched to participate in the battle appeared. The black light veil passageways in the bottom of the 2 bastions quickly closed and disappeared into the void again. At this moment, 2 large square formations were arranged neatly in front of Yi Xian. The 1,000 mosquito beasts on the left and the 1,000 ladles on the right. All of them were at the black hole realm. Just these 2 large phalanxes alone would be able to sweep through a starry sky nation, once they returned to the Third World's human race's technological base. However, Yi Xian didn't have the slightest bit of confidence as to whether or not they would be able to kill the middle stage origin stage existence in the void in front of them. The 2,000 black hole realm mosquito beasts and ladles could only play a supporting role in this battle. The key to determining the outcome of this battle still lay with the Mosquito Prince Shui Ben and the 8-star Royal Ladle. Of course, the 2 bastions' superstar obliterating cannons were also an important factor, but that alone was not enough. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly remembered the skyfall bow he had just obtained. Chapter 29:17. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin Superstar Destroyer Cannon. After finding out that the existence in front of him was actually a supreme existence with a terrifying cultivation of the 4th level of the origin realm, Yi Xian immediately began a series of preparations for battle. No matter what, he definitely wouldn't give up the countless multi-pupil perception crystals in the underground corpse pool behind him. In fact, even though Yi Xian had made a lot of preparations, it was the most representative of what he had, even though it wasn't all that he had. If the Origin Realm Mosquito Prince Shui Ben and the 8-star Wanghua were to join forces, and if the 2,000 Black Hole Realm Mosquito Beasts in Jianghu were to join forces, and if the Black Mosquito Ship and the Black Wind Ship were to launch a sneak attack from afar with the Superstar Destroyer cannons, and if the Heaven-Fallen Bow, which he had just obtained from the Primordial Era, were to be added into the mix, if he was unable to suppress the other party like this, then even if Yi Xian were to release the 100,000 Void Soldiers and 10 million Mosquito Beasts from the Black Wind and the Black Mosquito Ship, in the end, even if he could win, it would definitely be a Pyrrhic victory. The reason why he dared to take this gamble was not only because he still had 100,000 soldiers and 10 million Mosquito Beasts in his hands. Any existence below the Grotto Heaven realm, regardless of the casualties, could easily exhaust the existence that was charging towards him. The more important reason was his anticipation for the heaven-falling bow and his confidence in the weeping soul bloodhorn that he couldn't find in his undying world. The 9-star Ladle Empress was a Grotto Heaven realm existence, but she was still crushed and killed by the weeping soul bloodhorn without any suspense. If that was the case, then what did the Origin 4th level cultivators that were charging toward them count for? If his life was in danger, Yi Xian believed that the weeping soul bloodhorn hidden in some corner of his undying world would definitely take action. No matter what it was scheming by staying in Yi Xian's body, one thing was for certain. It definitely didn't want to see Yi Xian die. Once Yi Xian died, its scheme would be for naught. From this point of view, before Yi Xian truly matured, having such a mysterious and incomparably powerful existence within his body didn't seem to be completely without benefits. Yi Xian immediately shook his head and smiled bitterly when he realized this. He couldn't express his feelings in words. At this moment, the powerful 4th-level Origin Realm existence that was rumbling toward him finally appeared at the end of the void. Roar! An earth-shattering roar of a tiger assaulted his face. The formless sound wave seemed to have transformed into an incomparably fierce and mighty attack. Everywhere it passed, the void trembled, and a buzzing sound covered the heavens and the earth like a tide. Accompanied by this incomparably powerful tiger's roar, a light blue arrow rushed over at an extremely fast speed from the end of the void in front of him. Perhaps it was because of the sudden appearance of the 2,000 mosquito beasts and the army of generals. The other party clearly slowed down at this moment. The light blue arrow gradually solidified, and a gigantic 4 trigrams jade-eyed tiger that was more than 10 meters long appeared in the distant void in front of his line of sight. Its eyes were filled with ridicule and disdain, and its body had completely stopped. As if it was taking a leisurely stroll, it stepped on the void, lazily and slowly approaching step by step. It seemed slow, but with every step it took, it was clearly approaching at a rapid speed. In the blink of an eye, it was already 1,000 miles away. Screech! The frenzied mosquito prince was the first to act up. It must have felt the provocation from the other party's mocking and disdainful gaze. At this moment, it let out a mournful howl towards the sky, and the blood light around its body instantly intensified. The wings on its back flapped wildly, and with a surging killing intent, it instantly flew into the distance. Wang! Almost at the same time, a large number of rapid buzzing sounds suddenly rang out. The 1,000 Black Hole Realm Mosquito Beast elites that had been summoned by Yi Xian to participate in this battle also quickly turned into afterimages and rushed away. As for the 1,000 Black Hole Realm Void Generals, under the leadership of the 8-star Wang Jiao, they did not make any sound, but their speed seemed to be 30% faster than the previous 1,000 Mosquito Beasts. Before Yi Xian could react, they had already turned into a black light and appeared behind the Mosquito Prince Shui Ben in the blink of an eye, quietly facing the 4 trigrams jade-eyed tiger. At the same time, although Yi Xian's figure stayed in place without any unusual movements, he had even activated the perfect vibration before, completely hiding his figure and aura. But it was not that he did not do anything. While his figure was quietly standing there, his mind had already started to work rapidly. He was rapidly comprehending the golden ball of energy in his sea of consciousness. Inside it was the profundity of the heaven-falling bow that Yi Xian had inherited from the 9-eyed golden crystal. As his mind and consciousness focused on this matter to the greatest extent, the mysterious golden ball of energy in his sea of consciousness was constantly releasing a large amount of cryptic rune information. It fused with Yi Xian's primordial spirit consciousness and rapidly deduced. Roar! At the end of the void in front, a second tiger roar rang out at this time. The Mosquito Prince Shui Ben and the 8-star Wang Jiao, who were the fastest, finally faced the 4 trigrams jade-eyed tiger head-on at this time. The situation of the battle had been desperate from the very beginning. The strength of the 4 trigrams jade-eyed tiger was shocking. Although as a ferocious beast, This tiger did not have any remarkable abilities. The strength of its physical body seemed to have evolved to a certain extent. As the second tiger roar rang out, the mosquito Prince Shui Ben and the 8-star Wang Jiao were unsurprisingly pushed back by the tiger's claw and instantly blasted away. Although they did not seem to be seriously injured, just this round of confrontation had clearly shown the great disparity in strength between the two sides. If they could not even withstand the power of a casual swipe of the tiger's claw, how could they suppress and kill? Seeing this scene from afar, Yi Xian's heart instantly sank to the bottom of the valley. He fiercely clenched his teeth, and his eyes were already bloodshot. This was a sign that his mind had been pushed to the limit. The boundless and obscure rune information within the golden ball of light in his sea of consciousness was being rapidly comprehended and deduced by him at an extremely fast speed, regardless of the exhaustion of his mind. Screech! Hiss! The mosquito prince and the 8-star Wang Jiao, who had been sent flying by the tiger's claw as soon as they met, were completely enraged. They let out a shrill hiss at the same time, and their auras suddenly surged as they pounced forward again. Following closely behind were the 2,000 black hole stage mosquito beasts and the 7-star Wang Jiao who had just arrived. Superstar Destroyer Cannon. Blast! As his eyes were about to split open, Yi Xian, who'd concealed his figure and aura, instantly dispelled the perfect vibration. At the same time his figure appeared, he let out a furious roar. 2 orders of spiritual imprints shot out from his hands in the blink of an eye, entering the bodies of the 2 space fortresses, the Black Mosquito and the Black Wind, that were hidden in the void. Buzz. Chapter 29:18. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Unstoppable hum. A buzzing sound rang out. Although the sound was weak, the frequency of the trembling seemed to have reached an extreme, even surpassing the effect of the spatial oscillator after it was activated. In the instant the sound was transmitted, Yi Xian even felt as if his primordial spirit was about to be shattered into countless tiny cosmic particles. Whoosh! Whoosh! Before he came back to his senses, the terrifying humming sound that had reached a certain extreme frequency was replaced by 2 low sounds of breaking through the air. In the void far to his right, where the Black Mosquito and the Black Wind were, 2 scorching light pillars with a diameter of about 10 meters suddenly shot out. As soon as they appeared, they had already reached the end of the void and instantly reached the place where the bloody battle was taking place. Yes, the 2 scorching pillars of light were only 10 meters in diameter. Even the energy pillars of the star cannons of 1,000-meter-long planetary-level warships were 10 meters in diameter, and the energy pillars of the star cannons of a 3,000-meter-long planetary-level warships were 50 meters in diameter. In that case, the superstar cannons fired by the bastion with a diameter of 10,000 meters should not only be 10 meters in diameter, but at least 100 meters in diameter. In fact, the superstar cannons on the Black Mosquito and the Black Wind could reach a maximum diameter of 300 meters once they fired. The smallest diameter was 10 meters. The diameter of the energy pillars of the bastion's superstar cannons could be controlled. If the cannon was fired with a maximum diameter of 300 meters, it would be fun to watch, but the 2,000 mosquito beasts and General Biao around it would obviously be killed in one shot as well, except for the 4 Seasons Biao Tiger. It was precisely because of this that Barker's order was to attack with the smallest condensed energy diameter. The energy pillars of the superstar cannons were so fast that they even exceeded the speed of light. At this moment, the 2 pillars of energy shot forth at almost the same time. Even though the 4 Seasons Beaching Tiger was a 4th-stage origin realm being, it was caught off guard and managed to evade one of the pillars of energy by a hair's breadth. However, the other pillar of energy still struck its body in the end. Even though it had only brushed past it, it still instantly took away one of the 4 wings on its back without any suspense. Under the immense pain, an earth-shattering 3rd tiger roar rang out at this moment, carrying with it the boundless fury of killing the heavens and controlling the earth. Roar! Although the energy pillars of the bastion's superstar cannons were terrifying, the 4 Seasons Biao Tiger was a 4th-level origin realm warrior. The 2 energy pillars had no chance of hitting it at all. All of this happened too suddenly, causing it to be caught off guard and fall into a trap. Because of that, the 4 Seasons Biao Tiger's translation when the 4 Seasons Biao Tiger one of its wings Biao Tigers because of the terrifying temperature Biao Tiger, its ferocity was finally completely provoked. Roar! 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 Furious tiger roars rang out one after another. The furious 4 Seasons Biao Tiger went completely berserk, and the domineering and ferocious intent in its body was extremely fierce. With just a few casual swipes of its claws, the Mosquito Emperor King Shui Ben and the 8 Stars General Biao were sent flying again without any suspense, and they retreated rapidly. This time, it was clearly injured, and it seemed to be quite serious. Its rapidly retreating figure was sent flying for dozens of miles, but it still could not stabilize itself. Roar! After sending the Mosquito Emperor Shui Ben and the 8 Stars General Biao flying with its claws, the enraged Four Seasons Biao tiger was clearly not satisfied. It roared angrily again and swept its claws. More than 100 mosquito beasts and the 7 Stars General Biao that were closest to it were instantly killed by this swipe. The fleshly bodies of the mosquito beasts turned into dust and completely disappeared. Only a faint blood mist appeared in their original place, but it was also dissipating instantly with the raging energy of the battle. As for the other dozens of 7 Stars General Biao, their crystal bodies were extremely tough, so even if they were crushed by a supreme existence at the middle stage of the origin stage, their bodies were basically intact, with only a little damage and cracks. However, the consciousness in their sturdy crystal bodies had undoubtedly been completely wiped out. Dozens of slightly damaged black crystal bodies fell to the ground below like dead objects without any suspense. In the blink of an eye, they had already fallen to the ground. In just an instant, 2 supreme existences at the origin stage were sent flying again. In addition, more than 100 black hole stage mosquito beasts fell one after another. Its terrifying battle strength could be said to be unstoppable. With such a degree of damage, even Yi Xian could not help but tremble in fear. The strength of this 4 Seasons Biao Qing tiger had clearly exceeded his previous expectations. The situation had deteriorated to the extreme in an instant. Although the superstar obliterating cannons of the 2 bastions, Black Wind and Black Mosquito, could pose a threat to it, the other party was already on guard. While the superstar obliterating cannons were known to surpass the speed of light, they were clearly useless against the terrifying reaction speed of an origin stage powerhouse. They could not be counted on at all. In addition, the fact that the Mosquito Prince, Shui Ben, and that 8 Stars General Biao had joined forces and clashed head-on with each other had proven to be meaningless. The higher the cultivation realm, the greater the difference between a small stage would be. When a first-stage astral core realm faced a second-stage astral core realm, it was possible to fight to the death and drag the other party into the abyss as well. However, when a first-stage origin realm faced a second-stage origin realm, it was impossible to fight to the death. The only outcome was to be crushed. Under such circumstances, Yi Xian's only choice seemed to be to mobilize his 100,000 soldiers and 10 million mosquito beasts. They would suffer heavy losses and rely on their overwhelming advantage in numbers to forcefully exhaust the other party to death. However, the final result was clearly unacceptable. Even if this 4 Seasons Biao Qing tiger could not escape death, it would be a miracle if half of Yi Xian's 100,000 soldiers and 10 million mosquito beasts could survive. It's just a puny origin celestial tiger. I refuse to believe that I can't crush it today. This kind of tragic outcome that was close to total annihilation was clearly unacceptable to Yi Xian. As such, the idea of mobilizing 100,000 soldiers and 10 million mosquito beasts was immediately abandoned without hesitation as soon as it appeared in his mind. Yi Xian's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he let out a loud roar. The 3 spirit source cores and the void essence crystal suspended in 3 different positions in his knowledge, as well as the small ancient golden bow, suddenly began to rotate rapidly without warning. As the rotation grew faster and faster, a large amount of thread-like energy was clearly being extracted from Yi Xian's spirit source core and the void essence crystal at a terrifying speed. It was rapidly flowing into the ancient golden bow that was suspended in midair on the other side of his knowledge. Chapter 29:19. Drawing the bow to shoot the heavenly tiger boom. In that instant, all the changes in his sea of consciousness merged together and turned into a huge boom, causing Yi Xian's consciousness to become hazy. In a daze, he raised his left arm almost subconsciously. In the next instant, the originally empty palm of his left hand suddenly shone with a golden light, and a golden bow in the form of energy appeared in his left hand. The shape of the bow was simple and ferocious. In the middle of his palm was a 2-headed exotic beast. In the mouth of the ferocious beast facing up and down were the legs of 2 humanoid creatures. These 2 humanoid creatures also opened their mouths wide and seemed to be roaring. A bowstring that was clearly made up of countless fine golden threads twisted together was connected to the wide mouths of the 2 humanoid creatures. Then, a golden energy arrow appeared on the bowstring. At that moment, a strange golden light burst forth from Yi Xian's eyes. He reached out with his right hand and directly pinched the bowstring of the giant energy bow in his left hand. Holding the energy arrow, he slowly pulled the bowstring. 1. The buzzing sound of energy vibrating to the extreme suddenly rang out. In that instant, the space around Yi Xian seemed to ripple with an invisible wave. It was as if this arrow was only in the bowstring state, but the aura it emitted had already affected the space around it. Roar! At the same time, in the bloody battlefield in front of him, the Four Seasons jade-eyed tiger that was originally wreaking havoc and killing in all directions suddenly seemed to sense a strong sense of danger at this moment. A chill penetrated to the bone, causing its body to tremble. It subconsciously twisted its huge head and looked in the direction of Yi Xian from afar. At the instant the enormous golden bow entered its field of vision, the Four Seasons azure tiger's body shook violently, and it once again emitted a world-shaking tiger roar. However, the aura it emitted was different from the furious roar from before, and it clearly revealed a dense sense of despair. It was as if just by seeing this golden arrow that was about to shoot towards it from afar, this powerful Four Seasons jade-eyed tiger had completely lost all hope of survival, as if it was certain that it would fall this time. Swish! An extremely sharp sound pierced through the air. At this moment, Yi Xian let go of his right hand that was holding the golden energy arrow. The energy arrow, which was already filled to the brim with energy, instantly shot out. Even the void was torn apart. As the golden arrow shot out, a trail of black flames appeared behind it. It was a sign that the void was being torn apart. In that instant, the brilliant golden light in Yi Xian's eyes suddenly dimmed, and all the energy in his body seemed to have been sucked away. The power of the origin of spirit, the power of the soul consciousness, and even the mysterious aura of the void marrow crystal in his sea of consciousness transformed into the surging power of this arrow, leaving his body and whistling away. The huge golden energy bow that was originally held in his left hand also quietly dissipated at this moment, turning back into a small golden bow the size of a thumb, suspended in his sea of consciousness. Yi Xian's consciousness also completely recovered at this moment, but he immediately blacked out and fell into a state of unconsciousness due to exhaustion. He fell from the sky with a loud bang, smashing into the boundless earth below. Screech! Almost at the same time, the golden arrow whistled through the air at an extremely fast speed, as if it had directly ignored the distance of space. Even the Four Seasons jade-eyed tiger with the supreme cultivation of the origin Fourth Order could not dodge. Its huge body, which was nearly 10 meters long, was directly hit by the golden arrow without any suspense. It let out a roar that was no longer fierce and angry, but filled with endless sorrow. Boom! Immediately afterwards, the huge body of the Four Seasons jade-eyed tiger instantly exploded as if it had self-destructed. Not even a piece of flesh the size of a finger was left behind. Its huge body turned into a cloud of blood mist, and as the golden arrow exploded, it instantly collapsed and turned into nothingness. It was as if it had never existed or appeared before. Only the murderous and sorrowful intent that still lingered in the air was recounting the tragedy of this scene, recalling the might of this Four Seasons azure jade tiger's roar in the mountains and forests. Wang! As the battle ended in an instant, the figure of the 8-star Wang ladle, who had a supreme cultivation at the origin stage, trembled. It suddenly appeared with a trembling sound in the air, coincidentally supporting Yi Xian's unconscious body that had fallen to the ground due to exhaustion. At the same time, the mosquito prince Xue Ben and the 1,000 or so black hole realm mosquito beasts and the 7 stars Wang Biao all turned around and gathered around Yi Xian's falling body. They vigilantly watched everything around them and protected him. Although that arrow just now was far from the strongest power of this divine ability that had been passed down from the primordial era, the heavenly fallen bow. In fact, it could only barely be considered a beginner, but the price Yi Xian had paid was truly too great. All the power in his body, including the power of his mind origin, the power of his soul, and even the power derived from the mysterious aura of the void marrow crystal, had been drained in an instant. The small golden bow, which had been the size of a thumb before it had been activated, was like a real bottomless pit. The moment it was activated and used to launch an attack, the amount of energy required to activate it was simply too shocking. This time, if it wasn't for the fact that Yi Xian's body had the devouring system as the monitoring center of everything in his body, even Yi Xian's flesh and blood and life force would have been sucked dry by this golden arrow. At that time, once the arrow was shot out, Yi Xian's entire body would instantly turn into a dried corpse. This arrow would be the strongest attack that would be displayed at the cost of one's life. Right now, if one entered Yi Xian's sea of consciousness, they would see a dispirited and dispirited aura. In the entire vast sea of consciousness, other than the small golden bow that was still floating in place without any change, whether it was Yi Xian's spirit source core, the other void essence crystal, or the waves in his sea of consciousness that represented his cultivation level, all of them emitted a strange and tranquil aura. This attack had consumed too much energy, so much so that even his sea of consciousness had become dispirited. As if it had sensed this, the devouring system automatically gathered a large amount of star core origin from the undying world in Yi Xian's body. It absorbed the energy within and quickly channeled it into Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. At the same time, countless weeping soul beasts were taken out of a small spatial pagoda in the undying world by the devouring system and absorbed directly into Yi Xian's body. As the small black horns appeared, a large amount of mind origin power was absorbed and gathered in the devouring system's transfer station. Then, the last bit was channeled into Yi Xian's sea of consciousness and into the mysterious, deep purple mind origin core. Chapter 29-20. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations plucking until my hand cramps, ding. Congratulations. Host. Level up. Current level. Level 3 Meteor Realm. Yi Xian had just regained consciousness when the devouring system's notification rang out in his mind. His cultivation level had actually increased. He was stunned. It had to be known that Yi Xian's cultivation level had increased not long ago because he had absorbed a 9-eyed golden crystal from the depths of the corpse pond. How long had it been since then? He had actually increased his cultivation level again? Instinctively, Yi Xian immediately checked his own cultivation level and discovered that it was indeed the truth. Compared to his previous level 2 Meteor Realm cultivation level, his cultivation level had increased by quite a bit. It wasn't just his cultivation base that had increased to the 3rd stage meteor grade. Even his mind source core, which had just undergone its 5th metamorphosis and evolved into a level 6 mind source core, had grown from the size of a green bean to the size of a grape. The level 6 mind source core contained within had increased explosively by an enormous amount. In addition, Yi Xian also discovered a large number of star core crystals within his body. They were all blank crystals, and the star core origin energy within them had been completely absorbed. There was also a large number of small black horns, which were the remnants of the weeping soul beast's energy state after its body had been absorbed as mind source core origin energy. There were actually millions of them. Yi Xian immediately shook his head and smiled bitterly. His sudden increase in cultivation level and the massive increase in capacity of his mind source core origin energy had obviously been forcefully piled up by the devouring system while he had been unconscious. Although this could be seen as a blessing in disguise, it could only happen once. Even if Yi Xian was tempted, he only thought about it and quickly threw it to the back of his mind. Then, he remembered the 4 Seasons beaching tiger. Previously, when Yi Xian had shot that golden arrow, he had already fainted before that golden arrow had hit the beaching tiger's body. Therefore, he actually didn't know that the beaching tiger had fallen. However, when Yi Xian regained consciousness and looked around, he immediately understood what had happened when he saw that the Mosquito Prince, Shui Ben, Wang Biao, and the rest of his subordinates had all returned and were guarding by his side. It seemed that the fallen sky Bao, which originated from the primordial age, was indeed very powerful. He was currently only at the level 2 meteor realm, but he could actually kill a supreme being at the level 9 origin realm with a single arrow. It was a pity that he couldn't use this move too often. The consumption was too terrifying. That whistling golden arrow instantly absorbed all his energy. It was as if it was going to suck him dry while he was still alive. Thinking of that scene, Yi Xian still felt a lingering fear. However, although this move couldn't be casually used, to Yi Xian, it was no different from having an additional trump card that he could use to go all out with his life. Even a supreme being at the 4th level of the origin realm could be killed by a single arrow without any suspense. In that case, a powerful being at the 10th level of the Grotto Heaven realm would most likely end up in the same situation when facing the might of this arrow. In this devil domain, the strongest existence was only at the 10th realm, the Heavenly Passage realm. In other words, even if Yi Xian's identity was exposed in the devil domain in the future and he was hunted down by a supreme expert, at that time, he shouldn't have a problem protecting his life. But all of this was for later. For now, the most important thing was the underground corpse pool behind him. With this thought, Yi Xian's heart immediately trembled. This 4 Seasons beaching tiger had clearly seen the huge pillar of corpse chi soaring into the sky from the entrance of the ring-shaped mountain. Since there was already a 4 Seasons beaching tiger, who knew what other terrifying beasts would appear next? If there were 2 at the same time, even if Yi Xian gritted his teeth and used the heaven-falling bow again, it would be useless. At most, he would be able to kill one of them. As for the other one, it would sweep through everything in an instant. Not only Yi Xian, but all of his subordinates would be wiped out. A tall tree attracts the wind. This pillar of corpse chi is too eye-catching. I can't delay the harvesting of the multi-pupil thought crystal. Otherwise, there will be more trouble. While muttering to himself, Yi Xian immediately took action. With a wave of his hand, he put the mosquito beast prince, Shui Ben, back into the beast ring, then opened the black light barrier between the black mosquito ship and the black wind ship, allowing all the mosquito beasts and soldiers to enter. Then, he stepped into the black mosquito ship and ordered Barker to order the black wind to follow him outside and quickly head back the way they came. What surprised and pleasantly surprised Yi Xian was that after a few short hours, the huge pillar of corpse qi at the mouth of the ring-shaped mountain had clearly shrunk by a large margin. According to this trend, the entire pillar of corpse qi would disappear within half a day. At that time, he would be able to enter the corpse pool to harvest it. Because of the disappearance of the pillar of corpse qi, the powerful beasts that had rushed over from afar would be lost if they were still far away. It would be very difficult for them to find this place again. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's heart settled down a little. He was no longer in a hurry. Half a day later, the pillar of corpse energy that soared into the sky finally disappeared. Yi Xian's mind shook as he immediately charged towards the huge ring-shaped mountain pass. Looking down, at the very least, there weren't any traces of flames in the center of the corpse pool. At least there's still time. I must collect all the multi-pupil thought crystals as soon as possible and sweep the entire corpse pond clean. Yi Xian was in high spirits. He immediately summoned the black wind and the black mosquito. The two bastions followed behind him and together they descended into the corpse pond. While they were still in midair, Yi Xian saw a large number of demonic corpse flowers in the center of the corpse pool. With a casual glance, there were at least a few hundred of them, and there were clearly 7 golden level 9 corpse flowers among them. What made him even more pleasantly surprised was that after descending from the entrance of the ring-shaped mountain, Yi Xian was surprised to discover that it wasn't only the corpse flames in the central region of the corpse pond that were extinguished. Even the corpse flames in the depths of the corpse pond in all directions were more or less extinguished. After all, the huge pillar of corpse qi that soared into the sky just now required a large amount of corpse qi to burn as a continuous energy supply. Under such circumstances, the consumption rate of corpse qi was obviously very terrifying. Therefore, there was not much corpse qi left in the entire corpse pool. Only a few sporadic areas still had signs of corpse qi rising. However, although the corpse flames were gradually being extinguished, there were still countless beautiful corpse flowers blooming on the surface of the corpse pond. No matter which direction Yi Xian's consciousness swept out, he could capture the signs of a large number of corpse flowers. It's hard not to. Chapter 29-21. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. A terrifying harvest, rumble. Rumble. Deafening rumbles echoed one after another. From the two space fortresses, Black Mosquito and Black Wind, troops lined up neatly and passed through the black light curtain channel, appearing above the underground corpse pool. These troops included 5,000-strong demon slave troops, 100,000 Black Mosquito demonic beasts that were at the nebula realm and above, and 100,000 void soldier ladles. Yi Xian had even activated the Dongshu shuttle, dispatching Gue Hai Yi Dao and his 1,000-strong demon slave troop. Now that they were in need of manpower, Yi Xian had to use as much of his strength as possible and use it wisely as possible. Very quickly, the mission of harvesting the multi-eyed perception crystals was clearly distributed by Yi Xian to all the teams. With Gue Hai Yi Dao, the Azure Corpse, and the other Kiliarchs leading the 6 demon slaves, starting from the central region of the corpse pond beneath their feet, all the way to the depths of the corpse pond. The 100,000 Black Mosquito magical beasts and 100,000 void soldier ladles also spread out, splitting into small groups of 1,000 people and quickly moving in all directions. Because they were powerful and fast, they were able to reach the edge of the corpse pool as quickly as possible. Then, starting from there, they would go back the way they came and pluck along the way. Harvesting from both ends at the same time and shrinking inwards could greatly reduce the time required. At the same time, the two space fortresses, the Black Mosquito and the Black Wind, were handed over to Barker. They immediately rose to the air above the huge mountain pass, activated the concealment formation, and paid close attention to their surroundings. Once they discovered any living beings approaching, they would immediately contact the Void Hole shuttle that was stationed at the center of the corpse pond and wait for Yi Xian's next orders. Following Yi Xian's orders, the 100,000 mosquito demonic beasts, the 100,000 void soldier ladles, and the 6,000 demon slave troops immediately set off. They rapidly spread out in all directions and harvested the crystals along the way. At the same time, the Black Mosquito ship and the Black Wind ship immediately activated the concealment formation and rapidly rose into the air. After hovering above the huge mountain pass, they began to prepare and recharge the Super Star Destroyer cannons according to Yi Xian's instructions. This time, Yi Xian's instructions to Barker was to adjust the diameter of the Star Destroyer beacon to the maximum of 300 meters. This way, if an Origin Realm ferocious beast was caught off guard, a single blast was enough to severely injure it. If the Black Mosquito ship and the Black Wind ship were to work together, it would not be difficult to kill an Origin Realm ferocious Star Destroyer cannons of the Star Destroyer cannons with a diameter of 3 Star Destroyer cannons at the same time. The Four Seasons Beaching Tiger made Yi Xian feel a great sense of danger. According to his estimation, even if the corpse flames in the entire corpse pool were extinguished, and the more than 100,000 people he sent out were still harvesting the multi-pupil perception crystals at the same time, the entire corpse pool was too vast. Even with this method, it would take at least half a day to harvest all the multi-pupil perception crystals in the boundless corpse pool. It was impossible to say that not a single ferocious Star Destroyer would appear in the outside world within half a day. Everything Yi Xian was doing now was to prepare for a rainy day. At the same time, Yi Xian, the Mosquito Prince, Shui Ben, and the 8-star King Ladle, who had been injured in the fierce battle with the 4G Beaching Tiger, didn't care about the cost and chose a large amount of resources from the resource warehouse of the Undying World. As long as it was beneficial for recovering their injuries, he threw them all at them. These were the only 2 peak-level experts in Yi Xian's possession who possessed supreme cultivation at the origin stage. Their existence was extremely important to Yi Xian. They had to be in peak condition at all times. After doing all of this, Yi Xian finally relaxed his worried heart. Immediately after that, he began to pluck the multi-pupil thought crystals from the flower trays of the demonic beauty corpse flowers at the center of the corpse pool directly above the huge crater of the crater. Previously, Yi Xian didn't let the 6,000 demon slave experts who were in charge of gathering from the nearby area directly start from the center of the corpse pond. Instead, they started from the edge of the center of the corpse pond. After all, he was planning on overseeing this area. That way, he would be able to respond to the 2 bastions on guard at the periphery. If something happened, he would be able to respond in time and in time. Therefore, the central region of the corpse pond was reserved. Yi Xian planned to leave it for himself to pass the time. In this area with a radius of 50 kilometers, Yi Xian's spiritual sense was just enough to cover the entire area. Under the sweep of his divine sense, the demonic corpse flowers that Yi Xian captured emitted a golden light, which meant that a 9-pupil golden crystal was condensed on top of the flower plate. There were dozens of them in total, and there were even more 8-pupil silver crystals and ordinary multi-pupil thought crystals below the 8-pupil level. This time, Yi Xian wasn't in a hurry to start with the dozens of corpse flowers. They couldn't run away anyway, so there was no need to waste time going back and forth. Next, he began to harvest from where he was standing. Yi Xian had gathered a total of nearly 100 multi-eyed perception crystals in the central region of the corpse pond. Among them, the 9-eyed golden crystal had 66 techniques. Unfortunately, none of the 66 9-eyed golden crystals had reached the perfect quality. Yi Xian tried to appraise them one by one, and sure enough, these 9-eyed golden crystals that hadn't reached the perfect level didn't contain any inheritances. From this, it could be seen how rare and precious the one he'd collected before was. However, to Yi Xian, the harvest this time was equally huge. Moreover, in his opinion, the entire corpse pool was so vast and boundless. Even if there weren't too many perfect 9-eyed golden crystals, it was absolutely impossible for there to be only the one that he had already taken away. Yi Xian had already witnessed the might of the primordial divine ability, the fallen sky bow. As long as he could obtain 1 or 2 more supreme treasures of this level, he would be completely satisfied. He believed that this vast pool of corpses would not disappoint him. Just 1 or 2 perfect 9-eyed golden crystals would definitely be there. Time passed slowly. Half a day had passed without him noticing. Yi Xian rejoiced that the Black Mosquito and the Black Wind, the 2 space fortresses, hadn't moved at all. Even he didn't expect things to go so smoothly. At this moment, the harvesting of the consciousness crystals in the entire corpse pool was coming to an end. Even if there were more space beasts that wanted to pull peaches, it wouldn't have much of an effect on Yi Xian. Chapter 29-22. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The corpse pond incident. Half a day later, the Black Mosquito and Black Wind returned one after another. All the demon slaves, Black Mosquito magical beasts, and void soldier ladles that Yi Xian had sent out to harvest the multi-eyed sense crystals had all returned. Furthermore, all the multi-eyed sense crystals that they had harvested were all gathered in Yi Xian's hands. The total was a terrifying number. There were more than 1 million sense crystals below the 8-eyed sense level. There were more than 30,000 8-eyed silver crystals. Although the 9-eyed golden crystal was the least, there were still more than 2,000 of them. Among them, there were 9 perfect 9-eyed golden crystals, just like the one that Yi Xian had previously absorbed. This far exceeded Yi Xian's previous estimate of 1 or 2. Yi Xian threw all 9 perfect 9-eyed golden crystals to the devouring system for evaluation. There was no suspense in the result. All 9 perfect 9-eyed golden crystals contained a supreme divine ability inheritance from the primordial era. In other words, including the divine ability of the fallen sky bow, Yi Xian currently possessed 10 types of desolate era divine abilities. This was definitely a terrifying number. Just think about the might of the fallen sky bow. No matter who grasped 10 types of terrifying desolate era divine abilities, they were destined to be able to sweep through an entire star field. Of course, with the primordial divine abilities, one had to have a strong enough foundation and strength to use them. With Yi Xian's current meteor realm cultivation base, he did not need to think too much. Just one of the primordial combat arts of the Heaven's Fall Bow was more than enough for him to use right now. In fact, even for this primordial divine ability, Yi Xian had yet to unleash its true power. There was a limit to its power. Once it was unleashed, it would instantly drain all the power in his body. However, the power that could be unleashed in the end was still just a damn small portion of this primordial divine ability. Therefore, although Yi Xian was excited, he did not plan to immediately absorb all 9 perfect 9-eyed golden crystals and accept the primordial divine ability contained within. He understood the principle of biting off more than he could chew. In any case, with the 9 eyes golden crystal in his hands, he wasn't afraid that it would grow wings and fly away on its own. In the future, when his cultivation increased, he would be able to absorb the second, third, and even more primordial divine arts whenever he needed them. But now, just the fallen sky bow mystique was already a little too much for him. At the same time, it was more than enough. Therefore, after a moment of excitement, Yi Xian finally put the 9 perfect quality 9-eyed golden crystals into 9 small crystal boxes and kept them in his undying world. At the same time, the remaining 30,000 over 8-eyed silver crystals and over 1 million multi-eyed sense crystals were all kept in his undying world. At this point, Yi Xian's objective in coming to the Devil Sage Forbidden Land could be considered to have been perfectly and superbly accomplished. However, only a short 4 days had passed since the Saint trial started. There were still 26 days left, and Yi Xian didn't know how to pass the time. Screech! Roar! Just as Yi Xian was hesitating, 2 different roars suddenly sounded from the huge crater above. There was a sharp whistle. A powerful roar rang out. However, all of them were filled with a strong sense of anger. 2 ferocious astral beasts had arrived at the same time, and judging from the commotion, they were not weak. They were both Origin Realm supreme existences. Even if they were not as powerful as the 4 Seasons Azure Tiger from before, they were definitely not much weaker. Yi Xian was slightly taken aback, but he immediately rejoiced. Fortunately, the 2 star beasts had arrived a little later. Otherwise, if the time had been pushed back a few hours, he and his subordinates wouldn't have completed their mission of harvesting the multi-eyed sense crystals in the corpse pool. The situation would have been unimaginably dangerous if 2 supreme star beasts of the origin stage had appeared at the same time. But now it was different. All the multi-eyed sense crystals in the corpse pool had been harvested, so there was no need for Yi Xian to guard this place. Not to mention 2 star beasts, even if 10 or 20 of them came, it wouldn't affect him in the slightest. Since he couldn't beat them, why couldn't he just run away? He could have stored the Black Mosquito and Black Wind into the undying world in his body, then directly enter the Dongshu shuttle, activate the concealment formation, stealthily escape the crater of the huge crater, and then quietly leave. However, just as Yi Xian was about to do this, an unexpected turn of events that he hadn't expected suddenly occurred without any warning. Swish! Swish! At this moment, the originally silent and vast corpse pool was suddenly swept up by an incomparably fierce hurricane. An invisible corpse aura constantly spread out from the surging corpse pool. In an instant, the entire corpse pool was once again shrouded in a layer of incomparably dense black corpse aura. Previously, because of the fire that Yi Xian had lit, there was almost no corpse aura in the vast and boundless corpse pool. But now, Everything had returned to normal in an instant. After all, the so-called corpse aura originally came from the endless black corpse liquid in the corpse pool below. Normally, the corpse pool was like an ancient well without ripples, so the corpse aura emitted from the corpse pool was very weak. It would take a very long time for it to accumulate to a certain scale above the corpse pool, forming a large layer of black corpse aura that enveloped the entire corpse pool. But now, the entire corpse pool was instantly roaring and surging. Boundless black-colored liquid surged endlessly, causing the black-colored corpse chi that effused out from it to accumulate at a speed that was simply countless times faster than when the corpse pool was still like an ancient well. In just a few moments, the vast and boundless corpse pool had once again returned to its previous state of being shrouded in corpse aura. Moreover, Xianxia clearly had a feeling that this large cloud of corpse aura that had once again gathered above the corpse pool in such a short period of time seemed to be even denser than before. Facing all this, Xianxia was completely dumbfounded. An extremely bad feeling suddenly welled up in his heart. He faintly had an illusion that the entire corpse pool below seemed to be completely enraged. Because of Xianxia's actions of wantonly plucking countless multi-pupil perception crystals, this corpse pool that had always been silent like a dead object was finally enraged. Before this, Xianxia had always subconsciously believed that this vast corpse pool was simply a dead object. But now, with a sudden change in the corpse pool, he finally understood that this corpse pool was alive and had its own consciousness. And it was precisely because of what he had done before that the entire corpse pool was enraged. Chapter 29-23. Headless Infant's Corpse Rumble. Boom! At the bottom of the enormous mountain, the boundless corpse pool was like a black ocean with countless waves surging up. Black corpse fluid covered the sky and covered the earth. Among them were a large number of primordial corpses. As the corpse fluid churned, all of them seemed to have come to life. This scene was like a group of demons dancing in a frenzy, causing Xianxia to be dumbfounded. His mind couldn't help but tremble. He didn't know what kind of terrifying existence would appear next. However, there was no doubt that an existence that could control such a large corpse pool was definitely not simple. The other party was definitely not something that he could resist, and even if Xianxia were to use all of his subordinates, he might not be able to resist even a fraction of its power. One had to know that even the primordial ability of the Heavens Fall Bow he obtained was only passed down from one of the millions of primordial corpses in this vast corpse pool. Then, just how terrifying was the existence that could control the entire corpse pool? Just thinking about it gave him a rough idea. Roar! Screech! Outside the huge crater, the two space beasts that had unexpectedly arrived were still roaring and howling. But from their howls, it was clearly different from before. They seemed to have sensed that an unknown change had occurred in the corpse pool, causing them to be bewildered and even terrified. Although they were unwilling to leave, they didn't dare to directly enter the corpse pool. At this moment, the howls and howls clearly revealed a sense of unwillingness and probing. Xianxia immediately waved his hand and stored the black mosquito and black wind into his undying world. Even the Dongshu shuttle was put away by him. This was because he knew that the power of the black wind and black mosquito ships was completely meaningless before this existence that controlled this vast corpse pool. Rather than attracting the other's attention from the outside, it was better to minimize the target as much as possible, hoping that the other's attention would be diverted from the weak him to the two powerful star beasts that were howling and roaring outside the giant crater. Other than that, Xianxia took the initiative to put away all of his subordinates. In fact, there was another meaning to it. It was a form of declaration for the weeping soul bloodhorn that was hidden in the undying world within his body. He was clearly telling the other party that he had no intention of resisting this time, so it better not hide anymore. Otherwise, if the other party really attacked him, then it wouldn't have a good ending either. This was a form of coercion, forcing the weeping soul bloodhorn to show up. However, even if it did show up, would it be of any use? Would they be able to withstand the attack of this terrifying existence that was about to appear and control the entire vast corpse pool? Xianxia wasn't sure about this either. After all, even if this weeping soul bloodhorn was the strange weeping soul blood beast that Xianxia had seen in the inheritance of the heavenly fallen bow, the weeping soul blood beast that was hiding at the edge of the desolate ancient star battlefield, then, this vast corpse pool was filled with the corpses of existences on the same level as it, those that participated in the primordial space war. The existence behind the corpse pool could control so many primordial corpses. Could this weeping soul blood beast, an existence on the same level as them, be a match for this mysterious existence? Moreover, the current weeping soul blood beast was only left with a single weeping soul bloodhorn. It was definitely far from what it could be compared to when it was at its peak. In fact, Yi Xian didn't have the slightest bit of confidence in this matter. He even thought of fleeing at the first possible moment. Unfortunately, all of this was obviously impossible because he'd already sensed an indistinct aura that firmly locked onto him at the instant before the unexpected change occurred in the corpse pool. It was precisely because he didn't move that the other party didn't make a move. However, Yi Xian didn't doubt in the slightest that if he moved his feet and revealed his intention to escape, then the other party would definitely attack him immediately. Once a supreme existence of this level attacked in anger, there was no need to doubt the consequences. From the looks of it now, my only chance of survival seems to have landed on that damned weeping soul bloodhorn. Moreover, even with that fellow's strength, it seems to be completely useless this time and will still be defeated. However, I still can't help but hope in my heart. This really makes me speechless. Realizing his current predicament, Yi Xian couldn't help but sigh. This time, he was truly in despair. The other party was a supreme existence that could instantly kill a 9-star ladybird emperor of the black hole realm. What could he, a mere 3rd-level meteor realm cultivator, count for? Screech! Just as Yi Xian's heart was filled with grief, an incomparably mournful howl suddenly came from the depths of the boundless corpse pool below. This howl was clearly mournful and caused one's hair to stand on end. However, for some reason, Yi Xian could faintly hear a sense of innocence and pure joy from the howl. This feeling made him feel that it was absurd, and he even suspected that he was hallucinating. Ha ha ha! Screech! Just as Yi Xian was in shock and doubt, a cheerful and innocent chuckle clearly entered his ears. Moreover, after this chuckle, it was clearly followed by an extremely ferocious howl. Although it was completely different, it was clearly the same voice, coming from the same existence. Yi Xian's body violently shook, because in the next moment, in the depths of the corpse pool where the endless waves of corpse liquid roared, a purple-gold light clearly surged out from the corpse pool below and appeared. The surging waves of the corpse pool parted by themselves, and it seemed extremely obedient. It seemed as if this mysterious violet gold light was the ruler of the entire corpse pool. This was basically the truth. Because along with the appearance of this mysterious violet gold light, the vast corpse pool that was originally raging endlessly had actually completely quieted down in an instant. Everything returned to its original state. The entire corpse pool was incomparably tranquil, and countless corpses of primordial beings floated up and down within it. At this instant, the weeping soul bloodhorn that was perfectly concealed within the depths of the undying world within Yi Xian's body was clearly trembling with excitement, yet it seemed to have concealed its aura even more perfectly due to fear, and it didn't dare leak out in the slightest. As for Yi Xian, his mind shook violently at this moment, and he didn't feel good at all. This was because he clearly discovered that this purple gold light, which was suspected to be the master of this vast corpse pool, was actually shooting straight towards him from afar. Moreover, as it grew closer and closer, Yi Xian clearly saw the form of this violet gold light. It was a corpse. To be more precise, it was the corpse of an infant, a violet gold infant, a headless infant. Chapter 29-24. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Kakeek. Screech. An innocent and romantic chuckle, followed by a mournful howl that soared into the sky, erupted from the headless corpse in the blink of an eye. At the same time that it entered Yi Xian's ears, the headless corpse also arrived in front of him. It stood firmly in the air with a distance of several meters between them. This corpse was the size of an ordinary baby. It looked like it hadn't reached full term yet. It was more like an existence that had died in the womb before it was born. Not only was it entirely purplish gold, it didn't have a head. Alright, it wasn't that it didn't have a head. It was just that its head wasn't on the neck between its shoulders. Instead, it was like a toy, holding it in its hand and playing with it from time to time. While it was playing with it, the eyes on the head kept staring at Yi Xian. Yi Xian clearly felt an even more intense feeling of being locked onto by his aura. He instantly came to an understanding. Sure enough, the mysterious aura that locked onto him came from this headless nascent corpse. In other words, this headless nascent corpse before him was the master of this vast corpse pool. The number of corpses in the entire corpse pool was simply innumerable. Yi Xian even saw quite a few terrifying existences that were as large as small meteors. But in the end, the one who controlled this corpse pool was a tiny headless infant corpse. This was extremely strange. What was even stranger was that the master of this corpse pool didn't attack him after arriving in front of Yi Xian. It didn't reveal any angry aura either. Instead, It gave Yi Xian the illusion that the other party was acting cute to attract his attention. Heavens, when this intuition appeared, Yi Xian simply wanted to raise his hand and give himself a tight slap. Narcissism. The master of this corpse pool is acting cute in front of you? To attract your attention? Can't you be more arrogant? This was Yi Xian's true thought at this moment. That's right, he didn't believe it at all, and he couldn't accept it either. However, he had to admit that this was indeed his intuition at this moment. His opponent had a terrifying background. Even though it was merely the corpse of an infant, it was able to surpass all of the other powerful creatures of the desolate era and become the master of this vast corpse pool. Right now, it was standing several zhang away from Yi Xian. It didn't seem to have any ill intentions. Moreover, it really was trying to attract his attention. Even if Yi Xian himself couldn't believe or accept it, intuition was intuition. He couldn't lie to himself. Not to mention, before the headless infant corpse's previous 2 roars, there seemed to have been a light chuckle with a hint of innocence. This was enough to explain the problem. Could it be that the other party was bored here and suddenly bumped into an outsider like him and treated him as an interesting playmate? If that was the case, then this headless infant corpse shouldn't have too much malice towards him. However, it was also because of this that Yi Xian suddenly felt that he should leave immediately. The sooner the better. Who knew when it would suddenly get bored of playing and find it boring? Then with a snap, it would snap his neck and become an existence like it? This kind of brat was the most difficult to deal with, and the most difficult to fathom its nature. The only way was to not provoke it. Actually, I really do have something to do. So if there are no other questions, why don't I take my leave first? Feeling the other party's purple-gold eyes without pupils staring straight at him, as if silently waiting for his response, Yi Xian felt his scalp go numb. He secretly clenched his teeth and expressed his intention to leave immediately. He really didn't dare to stay here any longer. Everything was too strange. Ka-keek. Screech. What responded to him was still the same 2 different voices as before. First, there was a burst of innocent giggling, followed by a mournful howl. The 2 were so different, but at this moment, when they sounded again, it gave Yi Xian a feeling of perfect harmony. Whoosh! Rumble. Just as Yi Xian was having a headache because of the other party's voice again, the entire vast corpse pool below, under the wave of the headless infant corpse's hand, once again stirred up endless waves, and the bodies of ancient creatures with shocking shapes floated out. What made Yi Xian even more taken aback was that from the mouths of the desolate era's corpses, demonic corpse flowers were clearly rapidly growing. At first, it was just a small bud, but then it grew at a speed visible to the naked eye, until it was more than a meter tall, and began to bloom into a flower disk. Then, in the flower disk, began to rapidly condense into multi-pupil sense crystals. The desolate era creatures' corpses were endless in this vast pool of corpses. However, before this, even though Yi Xian had ignited the endless black corpse aura above the corpse pool with a single fire, the corpse flower that had appeared in his mouth was only a portion of the desolate ancient creatures' corpses. At most, the proportion was about half. But at this moment, he didn't even need to ignite the corpse chi. This headless corpse just casually waved his hand, and all the corpses of the desolate era creatures in the vast corpse pool below grew a bewitching corpse flower from their mouths without exception. This scene was really too shocking. As far as the eye could see, the entire surface of the corpse pool was simply filled with demonic corpse flowers, one after another, and it was extremely spectacular. It was simply dazzling. Such a scene made even Yi Xian a little reluctant to leave at this moment. There were really too many of them. Such a huge amount of multi-pupil sense crystals was clearly the rhythm of one's hands going limp from plucking them. Obviously, facing this headless infant corpse, it understood the meaning of his words just now. It was precisely because it knew that he had the intention to leave that it made such a move and reaction. It clearly knew that he had plucked the multi-pupil perception crystal from the corpse pool, and it clearly knew that he was interested in this item. Therefore, after knowing that he wanted to leave, the headless corpse said nothing and directly used a certain ability that it had as the controller of the corpse pool. With a wave of its hand, it directly caused a bewitching corpse flower to appear in the mouths of all the desolation creatures in the pool below. This was clearly the rhythm of tempting him to stay. However, if the other party didn't do so, Yi Xian might have been forced to try and convince himself. In order to feign civility, he could only temporarily stay behind and wait for an opportunity to escape. But now, the more the other party did so, the stronger the feeling of uneasiness in his heart became. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. In addition, there must be a reason for this abnormality. Chapter 29-25. The little devil is hard to deal with. Dao friend, can you stop messing with me? I really have something important to do. I can't stay here any longer. Otherwise, I'll delay the important matters. At this moment, Yi Xian wanted nothing more than to turn around and run. But on the one hand, the other party had already done so much. Although the more they did so, the more terrifying the scheme behind it was. At least on the surface, the other party had already done everything to the end. They knew that he needed these multi-pupil sense crystals, so they did not wait for him to say anything and took the initiative to prepare so many. Under such circumstances, if he still didn't give him face, he would be too unapproachable. Of course, this was actually secondary. The most important thing was the terrifying strength of the other party. Although Yi Xian couldn't feel it and didn't know what realm the other party was at, just a wave of the other party's hand was enough to make the entire vast corpse pool respond instantly. Countless ancient creatures' corpses were scrambling to produce beautiful corpse flowers from their mouths. Just from this, one could see how powerful it was. At the very least, in Yi Xian's opinion, the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn was absolutely unable to achieve this. In fact, it was far from being able to do so. For such a powerful existence, even if the other party didn't fall out with him, he still had a kind attitude on the surface. However, Yi Xian didn't dare to act rashly. Even though he wished that he could immediately grow wings and fly away, right now, he could only carefully discuss with the other party. At the very least, he had to see that the other party had the intention of letting go before he dared to try and move. Otherwise, he wouldn't even dare to lift his foot. Kakik. Screech. In response to Yi Xian's probing words, the headless corpse laughed innocently once again. Then, it let out a terrifying roar as usual. Then, just as Yi Xian was in despair, the other party waved his hand again. Swish! Xiao! Swish! A large number of faint sounds of breaking through the air rang out. Streaks of radiance shot out from the corpse pool below like arrows. These rays of light were clearly the multi-pupil sense crystals on the countless demonic corpse flowers below. At this moment, all of them took the initiative to turn into streaks of flowing arrows and shot into the air. In the end, the countless multi-pupil sense crystals gathered together and turned into a huge crystal sphere with a diameter of more than 10 meters. This sphere was formed by countless multi-pupil sense crystals. There were black crystals with 8 pupils and below, silver ones with 9 pupils, golden ones, and mixed together, colorful ones. Right now, the headless corpse that was only the size of 2 palms extended a small arm and stood in front of Yi Xian in midair. It's up to you. Whether or not. Or not. Up. It. Up. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly wanted to cry. It was said that little ghosts were difficult to deal with. Today, he finally understood the true meaning of these 4 words. Originally, when he saw so many demonic corpse flowers on the surface of the corpse pond below, he was already a little unable to hold himself back. The reason why he could say that he could not stay for long, and that he had to leave was because Yi Xian had endured the pain in his heart and set it against his will. But now, not only did the headless corpse not relent, it gathered all the multi-pupil sense crystals in the entire corpse pond. There was no need for Yi Xian to pick them one by one. It seemed that as long as he nodded, these countless multi-pupil sense crystals would fall into his pocket. Under such a blatant temptation, Yi Xian immediately broke down. Of course, the more important thing was that he could see that the headless corpse was so persistent that it would not give up so easily. In addition, an existence of this level, such a strange existence, if one were to say that it had a good temper, anyone who heard it would only be able to laugh. It had already restrained its temper to this extent. If Yi Xian still didn't give it face, there was not much doubt as to what would happen next. Yi Xian now had no choice but to compromise. Even if he did not want to, he had to compromise. At the very least, he had to appease the headless corpse, then think of a way to escape and leave this place. This. You know that I really have something important to do, so at most, I will stay here with you for half a day. Bracing himself, Yi Xian cautiously said to the headless corpse. There was no other way. The headless corpse was so persistent. Although Yi Xian did not know what its ultimate goal was, he did not dare to provoke it. Under the headless corpse's repeated sincerity, The only thing Yi Xian could do was to compromise. Of course, from his point of view, this was not so much a compromise as a test. Yi Xian hoped to use all this to test the headless corpse's true intentions. What was its ultimate goal in doing all this? Ka-keek. Screech. What surprised him was that after Yi Xian showed signs of compromising and even made it clear that he could stay for a day, the headless corpse in the void opposite him once again let out the same light, cheerful, and screech as before. Then the huge crystal ball formed by countless multi-pupil thought crystals, which was held in one hand, suddenly rushed towards Yi Xian amidst the headless corpse's screech. This clearly meant that it had accepted Yi Xian's compromise. In exchange for this huge mass of multi-pupil thought crystals, Yi Xian could stay in this corpse pool for half a day. The headless corpse immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Such a huge amount of multi-pupil thought crystals even exceeded the total amount of multi-pupil thought crystals he had obtained before. If it was merely for him to stay in this corpse pool for half a day, it wasn't unacceptable. Even though what he would experience during this half a day might be an unprecedented horror. But for this huge amount of multi-pupil thought crystals, everything was worth it. Of course, more importantly, he had no choice but to fight. The headless corpse did not give him much choice at all. It was very overbearing. This half a day's time was completely spent on appeasement, purely out of helplessness and compromise. With this helplessness, Yi Xian faced the huge amount of multi-pupil thought crystals flying towards him and subconsciously kept them all into the undying world in his body. This was what he obtained immediately, so there was no need to be polite. However, the moment this huge ball of multi-pupil thought crystals with a diameter of about 10 meters disappeared, he clearly saw that the headless corpse on the opposite side turned into a ray of light and directly entered his body. It was as if the countless thought crystals that Yi Xian kept were a ticket, and now, the headless corpse had paid the ticket and followed on board. Damn! You can't play like this. Chapter 29-26. The bloodhorn was suppressed. As the golden-purple headless infant corpse, which exuded a mysterious and noble aura, transformed into a golden-purple ray of light and entered his body, Yi Xian howled in agony as his heart trembled violently. At the same time, a certain corner of the undying world in his body suddenly trembled without warning. This obscure tremor was immediately detected by Yi Xian. Almost subconsciously, Yi Xian extended his consciousness towards the location where his undying world was trembling weakly. Following that, he unexpectedly saw the weeping soul bloodhorn, which had already transformed into a tiny blood needle. This fellow was actually hiding here. In reality, Yi Xian had searched this corner before, but he had never found a trace of the weeping soul bloodhorn. At this moment, this fellow had voluntarily revealed itself by trembling slightly. There was clearly a reason for this. This reason was the headless infant corpse that had suddenly rushed into Yi Xian's body. At this moment, Yi Xian clearly felt a trace of fear and panic from the trembling of the tiny blood-colored needle. The other party was afraid. Perhaps even it did not expect this headless infant corpse to unexpectedly rush into Yi Xian's body. This unforeseen event caused the weeping soul bloodhorn, which was hidden in Yi Xian's undying world, to panic. It unintentionally trembled slightly, revealing its perfectly hidden body. Furthermore, it was not just its body that was revealed. The moment the weeping soul bloodhorn, which had already shrunk to the size of a tiny blood needle, revealed itself, Yi Xian clearly felt this tiny blood needle begin to move stealthily, but without any hesitation. It moved from the depths of Yi Xian's undying world to the edge. Looking at this movement, it clearly wanted to walk out of the undying world, then sneak out of Yi Xian's body and escape without a trace. This was clearly a sign that it did not dare to stay in Yi Xian's body with the headless infant corpse at all. Upon realizing this, Yi Xian inexplicably felt a sense of relief. Even the rejection of this headless infant corpse's shameless act of sneaking into his body was not as strong as before. At the very least, because of the arrival of this headless infant corpse, the weeping soul bloodhorn, which he had always been helpless against, was now in big trouble. To think that this fellow would have such a day. This made Yi Xian feel extremely relieved. At this moment, Yi Xian even had an impulse. He felt that it would be great if this headless corpse stayed in his body the entire time. At the very least, that shameless weeping soul bloodhorn would no longer be able to be arrogant and jump around. If this headless infant corpse could completely devour it, it might even be able to order it around in the future. Just as Yi Xian's mind started to form these thoughts, that thin blood needle that had appeared from the depths of his undying world had finally sneaked to the edge of the undying world. Furthermore, It immediately shot out of the undying world and directly charged towards Yi Xian's body. With its speed, once it left Yi Xian's body, it would be difficult to chase after it. At this moment, Yi Xian subconsciously shouted, "Little brat, stop it, don't let that fellow escape." As this shout rang out, the thin blood needle that had slipped out of the undying world coincidentally drilled its way out of Yi Xian's body. Furthermore, Yi Xian clearly saw that the needle, which was as thin as a needle, suddenly trembled violently the moment Yi Xian's shout rang out. A kind of flustered and exasperated aura rapidly surged out. If he was not mistaken, this weeping soul bloodhorn clearly bore a grudge against Yi Xian because of his shout. This was Yi Xian's intuition, but he firmly believed in it. Since that was the case, there was no way he would let it escape. Otherwise, with the strength of this weeping soul bloodhorn, who knew what it would do to him in the future? It was not easy to find an existence that could suppress it. This time he had to subdue it. Thinking of this, just as Yi Xian was about to shout again, a purple gold light suddenly burst out from his body without any warning. It turned into a waterfall and directly wrapped around the thin blood needle that had just drilled out of Yi Xian's body. Buzz. A weak but intense buzzing sound rang out. This purple gold waterfall that swept out from Yi Xian's body almost instantly wrapped around the thin blood needle, and then forcibly dragged it back into Yi Xian's body. At this moment, Yi Xian clearly had an illusion, as if there was a desperate wail coming from the thin blood needle. Such a scene caused Yi Xian to fall into a daze. His mind suddenly replayed the scene of the weeping soul bloodhorn crushing the 9-star Ladybird Emperor with the supreme cultivation of the Grotto Heaven realm in a crushing manner. And now, facing the purple gold waterfall released by the headless infant corpse, the mighty weeping soul bloodhorn's performance was no different from that of the 9-star Ladybird Emperor. It could only be crushed, and it did not even dare to show the slightest intention of resistance. All of this made Yi Xian's entire mind shocked. What kind of existence was this headless infant corpse? What kind of terrifying background and origin did it have? Even an existence as powerful as the weeping soul bloodhorn was unable to withstand a single blow from it. No, it was only a single streak of purple gold that it extended. It did not even have the will to resist. Wang! Just as Yi Xian's entire mind was filled with shock, the purple gold waterfall had already pulled the thin blood needle into Yi Xian's body. Then, it was pulled into the undying world inside Yi Xian's body. Throughout the entire process, the tiny blood needles kept trembling from beginning to end, emitting a faint buzzing sound. These buzzing sounds clearly revealed a deep sense of despair. This scene was simply like torture, causing Yi Xian to feel a sense of disbelief and absurdity. What shocked him even more was that as the tiny blood needle was dragged into the undying world within his body by the purple gold waterfall, in a few short moments, Yi Xian discovered that the tiny blood needle that was originally blood-like had a tiny purple gold imprint on its crimson body. If it was magnified countless times, one could clearly see that this purple gold imprint was clearly a brand. It looked like a brand in the shape of a lamp, and the main body of this lamp was clearly a headless infant corpse. Chapter 29-27. System collapse. Following the disappearance of the purplish gold ribbon that wrapped around the tiny blood needle, the tiny blood needle no longer showed any signs of movement. It didn't attempt to escape from Yi Xian's undying world, nor did it attempt to escape. It also didn't try to enter the depths of the undying world again. Just like before, it silently concealed itself. It seemed to have become obedient, remaining in Yi Xian's undying world. With a single glance, there was no need to search for it, as one could see its existence with just a glance. As for the purplish gold corpse lamp imprint that was imprinted on the tiny blood needle, it was so eye-catching that it stung Yi Xian's eyes. Even though Yi Xian didn't know what this purplish gold headless corpse lamp represented, he roughly understood what was happening in front of him. It was refined. This terrifying weeping soul bloodhorn was actually refined by the headless infant corpse in an instant. If that wasn't the case, this weeping soul bloodhorn definitely wouldn't be so obedient. Although all of this caused Yi Xian to be pleasantly surprised and finally subdued this incomparably powerful weeping soul bloodhorn, at the same time, as the weeping soul bloodhorn was subdued without any suspense, an even greater sense of fear suddenly surged out from Yi Xian's heart. Because just from this point alone, he already had a deeper and stronger understanding of the strength of this headless infant corpse. For such an unimaginably powerful existence to enter his body, it was hard to say whether this was a blessing or a curse for Yi Xian. Furthermore, even though this weeping soul bloodhorn had been refined, the purplish gold headless corpse lamp imprint on the bloodhorn meant that it was the headless infant corpse that refined it. Even if this weeping soul bloodhorn was controlled to do anything in the future, it would be due to the convenience of the headless corpse lamp. It would have nothing to do with Yi Xian. The only thing that made him feel slightly reassured was that although this headless infant corpse had a mysterious origin and terrifying strength, at least until now, it had not shown any signs of wanting to harm him. Instead, it brought a lot of benefits to Yi Xian. For example, the huge crystal ball formed by countless multi-pupil consciousness crystals and the weeping soul bloodhorn that had been refined. Although the weeping soul bloodhorn was not refined by Yi Xian himself and could not be controlled by him, judging from the actions of the headless infant corpse, the reason it refined the weeping soul bloodhorn was clearly to control it in place of Yi Xian. In other words, the final reason it refined the weeping soul bloodhorn seemed to be for Yi Xian to use. It was just that Yi Xian couldn't directly control the headless corpse of an infant between them. However, it was also because of this that if Yi Xian wanted to control the weeping soul bloodhorn, he could not do without the headless infant corpse. He had to rely on it to achieve this control. Realizing this point, Yi Xian's heart suddenly jumped again. This guy couldn't be doing this on purpose, right? He purposely refined the weeping soul bloodhorn and allowed it to openly stay in the undying world within Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian could clearly see and touch it, but he was completely unable to control it. In this way, as long as Yi Xian was envious of the terrifying power of the weeping soul bloodhorn, then he would have to rely on the headless infant corpse. At least, he would not be able to drive it away. Speaking of which, the purpose of the other party's actions was clearly the same as when he took the initiative to gather all the countless eye-perception crystals in the vast corpse pool together. It was as if he was bribing Yi Xian and directly stuffed them into his body. In the end, it was all for the sake of currying favor with Yi Xian, making him realize its value, and thus achieving the goal of being able to stay in Yi Xian's body and not be chased away. But why? Why would such a powerful headless corpse of an infant, whose background and origin were definitely shockingly noble, spend so much effort to stay in his body? Why would it rack its brains to help him and curry favor with him? Apart from the devouring system, all the other treasures he possessed were far inferior to the weeping soul bloodhorn. Furthermore, the weeping soul bloodhorn had been refined in an instant. From this, it could be seen that the value of the weeping soul bloodhorn was most likely not enough to enter the eyes of this headless infant corpse. In fact, in Yi Xian's opinion, even the devouring system was not something that this headless infant corpse cared about. Since that was the case, why did the other party value him so much and rack its brains to curry favor with him? What was the real reason behind this? As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Yi Xian's doubts grew even stronger. With his temperament, if he did not get to the bottom of this matter, he would not be able to calm his heart down. At this moment, as the tiny blood needle that had already been refined became completely obedient in the undying world within Yi Xian's body, it steadily floated in a corner without any further movement. The headless corpse that had entered its body also transformed into a tiny purple gold light that carried a strong sense of curiosity as it wandered around Yi Xian's body. That feeling was like a child who had never seen the world and suddenly came to a large amusement park in a modern city. He was curious about everything and felt that everything was interesting. Therefore, he couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart at all. He didn't need an adult to lead him at all. He spread his feet and wandered around on his own. As the tiny purplish gold light formed by the headless corpse wandered around his body, Yi Xian's heart, which was already in his throat, started to beat wildly again. It was true that the other party was a child, but other than that, it was also a strange infant corpse with an extraordinary origin. From the moment this headless baby's corpse appeared until now, Yi Xian had indeed been able to feel a dense sense of innocence from its aura and actions. However, other than the pure aura of an infant, what Yi Xian felt the most was the other party's ferocity and terror. Even though it seemed to be roaming around in his body like an innocent baby, playing around happily, if he made a single mistake and it suddenly attacked without warning, displaying the cruel and ruthless side of an unborn baby corpse. This was his body. Once it was destroyed, wouldn't he be dead for sure? Thinking about this, Yi Xian could not remain calm. No matter what, he had to figure out the other party's background. It just so happened that it had entered his body, so the devouring system might be able to identify it. Thinking about this, Yi Xian secretly ordered the devouring system to identify the weak purplish gold light. In the next moment, the system's notification sounded in Yi Xian's mind, causing him to completely collapse. Chapter 29-28. Corpse Lantern Tattoo Ding. Appraisal failed. Ding. Warning. System crash. Restart required. Restart required. Ding! System rebooting. Progress 1. Ding! Congratulations, host. System reboot successful. As the familiar notification from the devouring system sounded in his mind, Yi Xian was completely dumbfounded. He stood there in a daze. The expression on his face and the feeling in his heart clearly revealed a strong sense of hopelessness. Did it crash? The system tried to appraise the purplish gold glow that was swimming around in its body like a curious baby. In the end, the system actually crashed. Yi Xian had never even thought of such a thing happening before, much less encountered it. Even an existence as powerful as the devouring system would crash? Furthermore, it wasn't because of a problem with his system itself. Instead, it was because when he tried to appraise a certain existence, the system would crash without any suspense at the very first moment. What did this mean? The other party's level of existence had actually reached the point where the devouring system would instantly crumble upon contact? If that was the case, then, just how terrifying was the origin of this headless corpse? The origin of countless universes? The source of the endless space and time? If that was not the case, how could its power be so perverse to such an extent? Just a touch from the system and it would directly collapse and die? As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Yi Xian felt uneasy. He clearly had a feeling that the devouring system in his body was not the only thing that had collapsed. Even his mind and consciousness were affected as well. In that instant, the devouring system in his body collapsed along with it. At this moment, while Yi Xian was still in a daze, the system notification in his mind finally quieted down. Although the system crashed due to the appraisal of the headless corpse, it was fortunate that everything was fine. After the system was rebooted, everything was back to normal. It wasn't that Yi Xian hadn't thought of asking the system to appraise it again. However, this thought only flashed in his mind for a moment before it was immediately thrown out of his mind. The devouring system was not an ordinary existence. How could it simply crash so easily? Hence, the extravagant hope of a coincidence could definitely be eliminated. In other words, the reason why the system crashed was definitely because of the headless corpse. Since that was the case, why would he recklessly try again when he knew that the result would be the same? What if the second crash caused irreversible and irreparable damage to the system? Wouldn't he have nowhere to cry? Furthermore, with the strength of this headless infant corpse, it was impossible for it not to have sensed the fact that the devouring system had tried to appraise it earlier. However, judging from its current behavior, it did not seem to care about it at all and directly ignored it. However, just because it ignored the first time didn't mean it would do the same the second time. What if the second test directly enraged it? Even if it was not editor lawless editor, Transin editor, Emery Feather Wu. The entire system had only tried to appraise it, but it had completely crashed. Under such circumstances, if the headless corpse really wanted to do something to the devouring system, there was no doubt about the consequences. Because of this, no matter how unwilling Yi Xian was, he did not dare to continue using the devouring system to do anything to the headless corpse. After all, it was a ferocious and ruthless corpse. He had not yet grasped the other party's temperament, so he did not dare to act rashly. Hence, in the following period of time, Yi Xian could only stand foolishly in the middle of the corpse pool like a mummy. His heartstrings were extremely tense as he closely observed the situation of the purple gold light moving around in his body. Time passed slowly. Unknowingly, half a day had passed just like that. During this period of time, Yi Xian hadn't left, and his body hadn't moved at all. His consciousness had been focused on his own body the entire time, hanging behind the faint purple gold light formed by the headless corpse lamp, and wandering around his own body as if he was wandering around. After half a day, not only did the faint purple gold light wander around every corner of Yi Xian's body, but it also did not let go of Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. What made Yi Xian despair was that the Mad Mosquito Emperor had said that it had left a protective imprint outside Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. Furthermore, it was an imprint with level 8 spiritual power. Spiritual power below level 8 could not enter Yi Xian's sea of consciousness at all. However, even the Mad Mosquito Emperor's spirit guard imprint was clearly useless. This strand of purple gold light entered into Yi Xian's sea of consciousness as if it was in a place where no one was present. With a whoosh, it directly entered Yi Xian's sea of consciousness. Helpless, Yi Xian's original consciousness could only follow it in. In his sea of consciousness, Yi Xian's level 6 mind source core and the void essence crystal, which had not paid much attention to Yi Xian until now, actually trembled when the wisp of purple gold light entered. Then, They emitted a subservient and fawning aura. All of this almost caused Yi Xian to despair. What he found even more unacceptable was that when the wisp of purple gold light flew towards the small golden meteorite bow that was suspended in the north of his sea of consciousness, even the terrifying meteorite golden bow, which had been passed down since ancient times, showed an obvious subservient intent. All of this made Yi Xian feel as if his entire body, from his physical body to his sea of consciousness, to his mind source core, to the ancient mystique he had inherited, had been subdued by the headless infant corpse. It was as if he had been refined by the headless infant corpse. It was as if he had been refined by the headless infant corpse lamp's imprint on the weeping soul bloodhorn. Just as this strange thought suddenly surfaced in Yi Xian's mind, he suddenly discovered that this strand of purple gold light had quickly escaped from his sea of consciousness. Moreover, it continued to descend, rushing towards the heart of his body. Before Yi Xian could come back to his senses, the wisp of purple gold light had already reached his chest. As a blazing purple gold light suddenly flared up, the entire wisp of purple gold light completely disappeared from his body. At the same time, a purple gold tattoo the size of 3 fingers appeared on the left side of Yi Xian's chest, which was outside his heart. It was a headless infant corpse lamp that was exactly the same as the imprint on the weeping soul bloodhorn. Chapter 29:29. 108 Superpowers. After strolling around for a while, it was unknown if the mysterious headless corpse was tired. In the end, it turned into a purple gold tattoo that looked like a headless corpse lamp and imprinted itself on the left side of Yi Xian's chest. The moment the zombie lantern tattoo appeared, Yi Xian was so shocked that he almost fainted. After all, the incomparably ferocious weeping soul bloodhorn clearly had an identical corpse lamp imprint on it. That corpse lamp imprint meant that the weeping soul bloodhorn had been refined by the headless infant corpse. Therefore, when such a headless corpse lamp imprint appeared on his chest, Yi Xian almost thought that he'd been refined by the headless infant corpse as well. If that was really the case, it would be really F***ed up. He was an existence that possessed both the characteristics of a human cultivator and a demon cultivator. Yet he was refined like a magic treasure by the corpse of a headless infant. If this matter were to spread, it would be extremely humiliating. However, after the initial shock, Yi Xian's throbbing mind quickly calmed down. Although the headless corpse lamp brand on its chest was exactly the same as the one on the weeping soul bloodhorn, the meaning it represented was completely different. If he had really been refined by this headless corpse, how could he still have his own consciousness? He had probably been reduced to an existence similar to his own devil slave long ago. Since that was the case, there was no need to be too worried. The headless corpse lamp imprint on his chest was probably just a way for the headless corpse to attach itself to him. It was better to let it stay as a headless corpse lamp tattoo on his chest than to turn into a wisp of purple gold light and wander around his body, right? With this thought in mind, Yi Xian's heart, which had almost jumped out of his throat, immediately fell back into his chest. Although he still didn't know anything about this headless infant corpse, it seemed that the other party didn't have much malice. Since that was the case, he could only let it be for the time being. In any case, he had nothing to lose, and this fellow was even able to easily crush and refine the weeping soul bloodhorn. It was obvious that this fellow's origins were absolutely extraordinary. In comparison, he was merely an ant at the 3rd level of the meteor realm. Since he couldn't avoid it, then he would take it as it came and let nature take its course. There was a saying that was very good. When a woman's virginity came and she couldn't resist, then she should just close her eyes and enjoy it. At this moment, Yi Xian felt that this was his state of mind. With the terrifying strength of this headless infant corpse, he couldn't resist it no matter what. Since that was the case, he might as well not worry and enjoy the benefits brought by the other party with peace of mind. As for the consequences of the consequences in the future, that was a matter for the future. It was too early to worry about this matter. Since it couldn't change anything, it was completely meaningless. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian simply stopped thinking about the headless infant corpse. Instead, after calming down and stabilizing his emotions, he began to clean up the huge gains he obtained from the headless infant corpse. As the master of the entire vast corpse pool, the headless infant corpse's means were obviously extraordinary. Previously, Yi Xian struggled like this and spent a lot of time and effort before finally obtaining a large number of multi-pupil thought crystals. But with the headless infant corpse's means, it just waved its hand casually, and the countless corpses in the vast corpse pool automatically produced demonic corpse flowers. Moreover, the multi-pupil thought crystals on the discs of the countless demonic corpse flowers gathered in an instant, turning into a huge thought crystal ball. The headless infant corpse gently held it in its hand. These massive amounts of multi-pupil thought crystals were then used by the headless infant corpse as a bribe to curry favor with Yi Xian. Now, they all fell into Yi Xian's hands. Since he couldn't resist the other party, Yi Xian began to count the multi-pupil thought crystals after calming down. He put them together with his previous gains and counted them all together. When all the multi-eyed perception crystals were added together, it was definitely a terrifying number. Yi Xian spent a full hour to finish counting them all. Even though he was mentally prepared, the data he obtained still gave Yi Xian a huge fright. The total number of multi-pupil thought crystals below the 8-pupil level was more than 8 million. Among them, there were nearly 1,000,000 7-pupil thought crystals, which was far more than what Yi Xian had obtained in the beginning. From this, it could be seen that the quality of the demonic corpse flower that was created with a headless infant's corpse was far superior to the result of Yi Xian's own torment or the result of the corpse flames erupting from the corpse pool. This was also reflected in the number of top-grade thought crystals above the 8-pupil level. Excluding the more than 8 million 7-pupil and ordinary thought crystals below the 7-pupil level, Yi Xian had a total of more than 800,000 8-pupil thought crystals. This ratio made Yi Xian wonder if he had gotten the numbers wrong. It was so high that he couldn't believe it. Among the millions of divine sense crystals that he had obtained before, there were only slightly more than 30,000 8-eyed silver crystals, which was only a ratio of 3%. But now, there were more than 800,000 8-eyed silver crystals out of the total of more than 9 million. This ratio had directly jumped from 3% to almost 10% now. As for the 9-pupil thought crystals, it was even more so. Previously, among the millions of thought crystals, there were only slightly more than 2,000 9-pupil thought crystals, which was a ratio of 2 to 1,000. But now, this ratio had increased by 3 times, reaching 6 to 1,000. Among the nearly 10 million thought crystals, there were more than 50,000 9-pupil thought crystals. Among these 50,000 9-pupil thought crystals, there were perfect quality, which meant that apart from containing a large amount of high-grade refined thought crystal energy, there was also the existence of a remote antiquity divine ability inheritance. There were a total of 107 of them, including the one that was taken away by Yi Xian, which contained the divine ability of the fallen sky bow. The total number of perfect quality 9-pupil thought crystals he had obtained from the corpse pool was exactly 108. These 108 perfect quality 9-pupil thought crystals, apart from containing a large amount of high-grade refined thought crystal energy, more importantly, they represented 108 powerful divine abilities that were inherited from the mysterious remote antiquity era. Once Yi Xian had absorbed all of them, then Yi Xian alone would possess 108 divine abilities from the remote antiquity era. If this news were to spread, it would frighten people to death. Every living creature in the desolate ancient era was blessed by the heavens. The divine inheritances in their bloodlines were all secrets that were not shown to others. However, Yi Xian was able to obtain 108 of them. This was definitely the end of the world. Chapter 29:30. Kill all roar. Screech. Whoosh. It was also at this moment that Yi Xian had just finished counting all the multi-pupil thought crystals in his body. As his mind relaxed, he immediately heard several screeches and angry roars coming from the mouth of the huge crater directly above him. Before this, he already knew that there were 2 star beasts because the roars and screeches coming from above were different. However, at this moment, there were clearly more star beasts here. Yi Xian heard at least 4 different screeches and roars. These star beasts were clearly the same as the 4 seasons beaching tiger that Yi Xian had killed earlier. They were here for the multi-pupil thought crystals in the corpse pool. Perhaps they did not know that the corpse pool was rich in multi-pupil thought crystals, but with such a huge pillar of corpse chi rising from the mouth of the huge crater above the corpse pool, anyone could tell that something must have happened. Perhaps it was a sign of the birth of a great treasure, so these star beasts swarmed here. But now, the reason why they stopped at the mouth of the huge crater and did not immediately fall into the corpse pool after arriving at their destination was actually very simple. In all likelihood, it was because of the strange movement in the corpse pool, which vaguely revealed the aura of the headless infant corpse. It was precisely this aura that caused all the ferocious beasts that had arrived here to feel fearful, and they didn't dare enter the corpse pool at the first possible moment. Before this, Yi Xian did not even hear their roars and roars, which meant that they were still very afraid of the aura of the headless infant corpse. Even their roars and screeches were restrained. But now, because the headless infant corpse had entered Yi Xian's body and was dormant, Its aura was restrained and turned into a strange purple-gold headless corpse lamp tattoo on the left side of Xianxia's chest. Then, as the aura of the headless infant corpse disappeared from the mouth of the huge crater, the star beasts outside immediately roared again after feeling the aura of fear disappear. Listening to their roars that were more and more urgent, it was clear that they could no longer hold back and were about to rush into the huge crater and fall into the corpse pool. I wonder if I have the ability to control the weeping soul bloodhorn, which has become obedient, without the help of the headless infant corpse. Realizing that a great battle was imminent, Xian's eyes flashed with a bright light. If it was at this moment, he would most likely choose to directly activate the perfect oscillation skill and completely conceal his body and aura. Then, he would quietly slip out of the corpse pool and look for an opportunity to escape. But now, it was obviously impossible for Xian to make such a choice. Such a terrifying supreme existence had already entered his body, and merely the aura emanated from it was capable of causing all the ferocious beasts above to feel extreme fear. They didn't even dare to let out a roar or howl. Under such circumstances, was there any need to flee? Although the headless corpse lamp seemed to have restrained all of its aura and turned into a purple-gold headless corpse lamp tattoo on the left side of Xian's chest as if it had fallen into a deep sleep, Xian understood that as long as he extended a strand of his divine sense or mental energy towards the headless corpse lamp tattoo on his chest and activated it, the headless infant corpse with extraordinary origins would most likely appear again. If he really couldn't beat it, he could just ask for help. Now, Xian was full of confidence and no longer feared the star beasts outside of the crater. However, if he could not alarm this headless corpse, then that would be for the best. At this moment, Xian muttered to himself as he activated a strand of his mental energy and extended it towards the undying world within his body. Within the undying world, the weeping soul bloodhorn that had turned into a tiny red needle was still quietly floating in the air, as if it was slowly rotating on its own. Xian's strand of mental energy carefully approached. After hesitating for a moment, he quickly touched the other party. The tiny red needle clearly trembled, but there was no reaction. Although he didn't respond too strongly, at the very least, he didn't retaliate against Xian's mental strength. Feeling relieved, Xian immediately increased the amount of mental energy he poured into it. Soon, a waterfall of mental energy wrapped around the tiny blood needle. It clearly struggled for a moment, but in the end, it gave up and let Xian's mental energy wrap around it, dragging it around in the undying world. It was as if it had accepted its fate and had given up all struggle and resistance. Just as Xian was rejoicing in his heart, the spiritual energy that he extended out to wrap around the tiny blood needle suddenly moved slightly. He clearly caught a trace of an obscure spiritual fluctuation. Xian immediately dragged this trace of mental energy out of the undying world and threw it to the devouring system for magnification and analysis. The final result made him overjoyed. This trace of obscure mental energy was clearly a type of imprint, a type of mental imprint that could activate the refined weeping soul bloodhorn in the undying world. With this mental imprint, Xian would definitely be able to bypass the headless infant corpse and directly control the weeping soul bloodhorn, making it rush out of the body and go on a crusade against the enemy. Unfortunately, this mental imprint was clearly a consumable item. In other words, Xian could only use it to command the weeping soul bloodhorn once. After the mission was completed, the weeping soul bloodhorn would most likely fly back into Xian's body. However, Xian wouldn't be able to continue commanding it, at least until he obtained a second trace of similar mental energy. After coming to this conclusion, Xian was initially stunned, but he quickly understood. Obviously, everything he was doing, the headless infant corpse that had turned into a headless corpse lamp tattoo on the left side of his chest was clearly aware of what he was doing. The wisp of psychic imprint that had escaped from the weeping soul bloodhorn's tiny blood needle was clearly the result of the weeping soul bloodhorn's instructions. After all, the weeping soul bloodhorn was refined by the other party, so it was very easy for it to do this. In the end, it was still unable to bypass the headless infant corpse. Although the other party didn't directly make a move, this kind of one-time authorization was clearly obtained by relying on the headless infant corpse. This also meant that if Xian wanted to use the weeping soul bloodhorn in his body to do something in the future, he would first have to obtain the consent of the headless infant corpse and obtain a trace of mental imprint from it in secret. Chapter 29:31. The Bloody Horn. With excitement, Xian immediately moved his body and turned into a stream of arrows. He soared into the sky above the central area of the vast corpse pool. He didn't even bother to hide his figure and directly rushed to the huge crater above. Screech! Roar! Swish! Seeing the sudden appearance of Xian, the few starry sky ferocious beasts that had been lurking around the entrance of the huge ring-shaped mountain immediately roared and howled in unison. There was clearly a strong sense of provocation and madness in it. Xian was confident in his heart. He was naturally fearless. His figure stabilized and just happened to be 1,000 meters above the huge crater. He just stood in the void with a rather playful smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. He turned his head and swept a glance at the fierce roaring space beasts around him. There were a total of 4 ferocious beasts that had graced this place with their presence. At present, they were divided into 4 directions: north, south, east, and west of the huge crater. Their figures were also riding the clouds and mist, floating about 1,000 meters above the giant peak. They were basically at the same altitude as Xian, who was standing in the void. On the left was a human-shaped giant bear. Its entire body was pitch black, and its body was about 100 meters tall. It was like a small mountain range, and its entire body was emitting an extremely strong and violent aura. On the right side, there was a huge green bird. Jianghu was also close to 100 meters tall. At this moment, it was constantly circling in the air on the right side. Its pair of huge triangular eyes occasionally burst out with an extremely ferocious dark light. Its claws and beaks were also extremely sharp, faintly revealing a red light. It definitely had the power to tear apart gold and stone. As for the north, there was a ferocious beast that looked somewhat similar to the wolf beast. The only difference was that this giant wolf was not only close to 100 meters in size, but it also had a curved horn on its head that looked like a crescent moon. It was actually moon white. Finally, there was a strange creature that looked like a jellyfish lurking in this direction. Although its body was also huge, it was black and translucent. One could vaguely see that there seemed to be some black lightning swimming and flashing in its body. There was no doubt that this strange beast that could be called the Starry Sky Lightning Mother must have some kind of mysterious bloodline ability similar to thunder and lightning. Although the 4 Starry Sky ferocious beasts were different in size, they were equally huge. Moreover, the aura emitted from their bodies was clearly extremely powerful. With Xian's cultivation base of the meteor realm, it was obvious that he couldn't clearly sense their specific cultivation realm. However, if one were to make a rough comparison, then in Xian's perception, these 4 space beasts should be about the same as the 4G beaching tigers that he killed with a single arrow from the fallen sky bow. In other words, these 4 starry sky ferocious beasts were all supreme existences whose overall strength was around the 4th stage of the origin stage. If it wasn't for the fact that he'd already had a new encounter in the vast corpse pool below, this battle would have been a dead end for him. Previously, just a single 4 seasons blue jade tiger had almost caused Xian to be unable to deal with it. Now, 4 of them had arrived at the same time. If it wasn't for the fact that he'd had a new encounter in the vast corpse pool below, this battle would have been a certainty of death for him. Screech! Roar! Swish! Just as Xian turned his head to quickly examine the 4 starry sky ferocious beasts, they had clearly sensed the cultivation aura emanating from Xian's body. When they realized that the arrogant Xiao Budian in front of them was actually an insignificant existence in the 2nd stage of the meteor realm, a monstrous anger from being provoked by an ant instantly surfaced in the hearts of the 4 powerful starry sky ferocious beasts at the same time. In their extreme anger, the 4 starry sky ferocious beasts let out furious roars and roars at almost the same time. At the same time, their bodies moved without any suspense as they charged towards Xian, who was at the peak of the central crater. The giant black bear was the most direct. Its body flashed and it immediately punched out. Although its attack was simple, when this punch was thrown out, even the void cracked inch by inch. Rumbling thunder rumbled endlessly. As for the giant green bird with claws and beaks that flickered with a sharp red light, it suddenly flapped its wings and grabbed towards Xian with its huge red claws. Its speed was the fastest, and even though it was the last to move, it was actually the first to arrive. In the blink of an eye, it was already within 100 meters of Xian. As for the one-horned starry sky wolf and the starry sky lightning mother on the north and south sides, they stood still in their original positions, not moving at all. However, from the moon-white curved horn on the head of the lone giant wolf, there was clearly an arc-shaped light blade that was like a crescent moon. It directly ignored the void, and as if it had teleported, it directly arrived within 100 meters of Xian. Its speed was actually the same as the giant green bird's red claw that was reaching out. The last starry sky lightning mother, just as Xian had previously speculated, clearly controlled the power of thunder and lightning. A black bolt of lightning flashed out from its body without any suspense, and it also possessed the terrifying characteristic of ignoring the distance in the void. As soon as it appeared, it had already crossed a great distance, and with a moon-white blade of light released by the starry sky wolf, one on the left and one on the right, it entered within 100 meters of Yixian's body, and immediately smashed down. The 4 starry sky ferocious beasts all had supreme cultivation bases around the 4th stage of the origin stage. At this moment, they actually joined forces at the same time to attack Yixian, who was like an ant and only had a cultivation base of the 2nd stage. This was clearly a crushing defeat without any suspense. But at this moment, Yixian was not worried in the slightest. With the power of the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, even the 9-star Ladybird Emperor, who had a supreme cultivation base of the 10th stage of the Heavenly Passage Realm, was instantly crushed and killed. What could these 4 starry sky ferocious beasts, who were at the 9th stage of the origin stage, be compared to them? With this kind of confidence and an inexplicable throbbing feeling in his heart, Yixian did not hesitate in the slightest to completely activate the one-time use authority imprint, causing it to enter the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn that had turned into a tiny red needle in his body. Swish! In the next moment, the tiny blood needle that had been quietly standing there without any movement shot out from the undying world within Yixian's body in an instant, and in less than half a breath, it had already rushed out of his body. As soon as it appeared in the outside world, it instantly expanded with the wind, and in a short moment, it had already transformed into a huge blood-colored curved horn that was 10 meters long, and just like that, it suddenly stretched across Yixian's head. Screech! Roar! Swish! As the supreme aura of the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn suddenly spread out, the 4 space beasts that were attacking Yixian simultaneously let out a mournful howl without any suspense. Moreover, their bodies seemed to have reflexively retreated. However, it was obviously too late.